Chapter 151. Dispose of it yourself. Zhou Minghe replied. This. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. What is self-disposal? It means that the Qianyuan sword sect is left alone, and Yu Guang'an House and other Cangzhou cultivators can figure it out for themselves. Zhou Mubai and Chen Daoxian frowned slightly. Based on their understanding of Qianyuan sword sect, it is logically impossible for the other party to say the words to deal with it on their own. Unless. Long line for big fish. The two looked at each other and immediately thought of this possibility. Shinjue Jinren is hiding behind the scenes now, so what if Qianyuan Jianzong sends a few Yuanying Zhenjuan to Guang'an Mansion? The big deal is to exterminate this corpse. But it does not solve the trouble of Shenzhou Zhenchen. Only wiping out the corpse chaos in Guang'an Prefecture will undoubtedly cure the symptoms but not the root cause. In this way, it is better to divide this battle line into two parts, light and dark. The cultivators of Guang'an Mansion confronted the corpse servants refined by Shinjue Jinren in the bright light. When Shinjue Jinren couldn't help but jump out in person, the secret hand arranged by Qianyuan Jianzong would be dispatched. Catch this mouse that has been hiding for 400 years. Only in this way can the problem of God Zhu Jinren be completely solved. Zhou Minghe understood this deep meaning, Zhou Mubai understood it, and Chen Daoxian understood it too. But it seems that the elders of the Zhou family didn't understand a little, and they all had an indignant expression. This time, Chen Daoxian immediately admired the person who made this decision by Qianyuan Jianzong. Only by acting like enough can you catch big fish. The group of Zhou family elders in the main hall who do not know the truth and are incensed are undoubtedly the best actors. Patriarch. Since Qianyuan Jianzong doesn't care about us, we don't have to beg Bai Lai to beg them. This matter, we Guang'an Mansion cultivator solved by ourselves. Anyway, in the Zhenangguan battle, the Qianyuan Jianzong was extremely unfair to our Cangzhou cultivator. Speaking of this, everyone became more excited. The injustice of Zhenangguan campaign has always been a thorn in everyone's heart. Because Yi Wudao, the ancestor of the Yi family who fled before battle, not only was not executed, but only symbolically punished him for 100 years. This is no punishment, it's clear favoritism. Protect. Just because Yi Wudao has a good father who is the third elder in Qianyuan Jianzong. Otherwise. Based on what Yi Wudao did, the major families in Cangzhou might directly unite to tear him apart. What about cultivator Jindan? The Cangzhou cultivators add up to more than 10 million people. Among them, there is no shortage of Tianjiao Zifu that is comparable to Zhou Mubai. Yi Wudao can stop one Zhou Mubai, can he stop the second one, and the third one? What's more, there are hundreds or thousands of cultivators in Cangzhou Zifu. He is a cultivator in the early stage of Jindan in Yi Wudao, how can he resist? But because of Yi Wudao's background and the decree of Qianyuan Jianzong, the Cangzhou cultivator could only smash his teeth and swallow it. Okay, Zhou Minghe stood up from the throne of the patriarch, since everyone thinks that our Guang'an cultivators can solve it on our own, it's better for me, the Zhou family, to take the lead. Together with the Yang family, the Wu family, and the Qin family on Shuanghu Island, we sent out invitations to invite colleagues from Guang'an Prefecture to discuss the formation of a coalition army. What do you think? This. The elders of the Zhou family just called him fierce, but when he thought that he was going to fight against the peerless murderer Shinjue Zhen, he still felt a drumbeat in his heart. After all. At that time, the real Shinjue who held the inheritance of the immortals, but the existence of killing Jindan was like killing a dog. There are so few Jindan cultivators in Cangzhou. Otherwise, in the other states of Wangxinghai, there would be very few Jindan cultivators like Cangzhou and several neighboring states. The Zhou family was also beaten by Shinjue Jinren back then. Relying on this fifth-order mountain protection formation, they forced their way to the arrival of reinforcements from the Qianyuan sword sect. This solved the danger of the Zhou family. Otherwise, the reinforcements of Qianyuan Jianzong would be delayed for a few days. The Zhou family disappeared in the history of Wan Xinghai just like the other disappearing Cangzhou clans. After all, Shinjue Zhenren did extremely terrifying things back then, and he gathered an army of loose cultivators under his hands to burn, kill and everywhere. Every time I went to a cultivator family, it was a meal of killing and robbing, and then setting fire to burn everything on the spiritual veins. It's utterly insane. In addition to not destroying the spiritual veins, there was nothing that Shinjue Zhenren dared not do in those days. Even more so. The major families in Cangzhou united to form a coalition to destroy him, but found that this guy was more slippery than the loach. Whenever the moment of desperation is reached, Shinjue Zhenren can always rely on the magical instruments inherited from the immortals to escape and save their lives. Made everyone extremely helpless. Now it seems. Qianyuan Jianzong probably only seriously injured him back then, and did not catch and kill him. Zhou Mingho saw everyone hesitate, and his face suddenly sank. Why, everyone was so noisy just now, and now they are all dumb and afraid of death. Hear this exhilaration. How can the elders of the Zhou family endure it? I saw an elder from the Zhou family jumping out of the crowd, swearing and swearing, if I, Zhou Mingyue, are afraid of death, I will only teach you to be killed by lightning. Boom boom boom. A muffled thunder sounded. This Zhou family elder actually made a great vow in public. This time, everyone was infected by his emotions, stood up one by one, and said loudly, no regrets. It's a big deal to fight with them. Yes. Fight with them. I'm afraid of a bird's egg. I was in Zenangwan back then, and I broke through in my life. I'm also afraid of a few little zombies. It's a joke. That is. Zhou Mingho saw the strong fighting spirit in everyone's eyes, and the smile in his eyes flashed away. Well done. Well done. It's about the emotion and expression that looks like death. Zhou Mingho nodded secretly in his heart. Out of the hall. Chen Daoxian handed farewell to Zhou Mucheng and said, it will take a month at the earliest to inform the colleagues of Guang'an, and it will probably take a few months to form a coalition army. The younger brother has to go home first, otherwise he will always be vaguely concerned. Zhou Mubai certainly knew what Chen Daoxian's concern was referring to. Immediately comforted, Brother Chen, don't worry, the Zhao family is on the right of my Lingbei Island, and your Chen family's Shuanghu Island is on the left of my Lingbei Island. Even if they want to go to your Chen family, they have to pass my Zhou family. What? Having said that, if you don't go back, you will always feel uneasy, and you will be uneasy. Having said all that, Zhou Mubai couldn't hold back any longer, so he could only hold hands and say, take care all the way. Well, Brother Zhou is precious. Say it. Chen Daoxian turned into an escape light and flew in the direction of Lingrui City. He hasn't forgotten that before he left Chen Xianhe alone in Lingrui City. A few days have passed now. I don't know if Chen Xianhe is still in Lingrui City. In terms of emotion and reason, he should go to Lingrui City to have a look first. Chen Daoxian had a hunch that fighting against the real Shinju would not happen overnight, even if there were secret hands arranged by Qianyuan Jianzong. Because from the fact that this guy can hide for 400 years, it can be seen that this is a character who is wretched to the extreme. Without absolute certainty, it is impossible for him to end up in person. Chapter 152. After a few hours, Chen Daoxian's escape light landed outside Lingrui City. Before he could enter Lingrui City, a young family cultivator who was waiting at the city gate recognized Chen Daoxian. This cultivator of the Yang family is in the middle of the year, and his appearance is Zhou Zheng, and he looks quite favorable. Are you Chen Daoxian, your friend Chen Daoxian? Daoist is. Chen Daoxian didn't recognize who the other party was for a while, and he could only recognize the cultivator of the Yang family through his clothes. The middle-aged cultivator cupped his hands and said with a smile, fellow Daoist, please don't misunderstand me. This is the first time the two of us have met. I am under the order of the Patriarch, and we are waiting for fellow Taoists here. Oh. Old Ancestor Yang's order. Qin Daoxian moved in his heart. Exactly, fellow Taoist, please. The middle-aged cultivator said and made a please gesture. Qin Daoxian nodded. Dao Yu leads the way. This is Lingrui City, and because he is a master of art, he is not afraid of anyone pretending to be a young family cultivator to harm him. After a stick of incense, the escape of the two stopped in front of the Yang family land. This is the second time Qin Daoxian has come to the Yang family land. Last time I came, he was only a cultivator at the chi-refining stage. Although his strength was not weak, he could even kill a female cultivator of the Izumo country in the early stage of foundation building with his bare hands. But compared with the current strength, there is no doubt a world of difference. After fighting with different enemies several times, Qin Daoxian has basically determined his upper limit of strength, which is probably different from the monks in the early days of Zifu. The only place he is currently worse than the early cultivator of the Zifu is probably on defense. In short, the current Qin Daoxian can barely be regarded as a slightly weak early Zifu cultivator. This is the foundation of forging the foundation of the strongest swordsmanship. Qin Daoxian also had a guess as to why the Yang family was looking for him. Undoubtedly, he was interested in him, the second sword cultivator in Guang'an Prefecture, and wanted to invest a sum in him in advance. The reason why the big family is standing still. In addition to the family background, the invisible personal connections are also another magic weapon for them to continue the family. For example, Zhou Mubai and Qin Daoxian experienced a life-and-death friendship. When the Zhou family was in trouble, Zhou Mubai begged to come to the door, and Qin Daoxian could just sit back and watch? Obviously not possible. That's what the Yang family was thinking at the moment. Although it is a little late to invest in Qin Daoxian, it is better than doing nothing at all, right? With Yang Linyuan's shrewdness, how could he not understand this truth? But if you want to do business outside of Guang'an House, the requirements for family prestige are not ordinary. Otherwise, if you go to someone else's territory, you will be very likely to be suppressed. Currently in Guang'an Prefecture, only the Zhou family has the strength to expand their business to the entire Zhangzhou. Even the Yang family, the second largest family in Guang'an Prefecture, only monopolized the ship business in Guang'an Prefecture, and did not expand this business to other provinces. I've long forgotten some small things, Fairy Yang doesn't have to care anymore. Qin Daoxian arched his hands. Hearing this, Yang Linyuan laughed and said, yes, a little bit of grudge, just say it. But having said that, after all, my Yang family made a mistake first, and it's not enough to apologize. After that, he looked at Yang Gongwan. Wainer, why don't you take out the things? Oh. Yang Gongwan made a playful expression, and immediately took out a sword box from the storage bag. Open the sword box in public. I saw a sword chi rising into the sky, and as the sword chi gradually subsided, a flying sword overflowing with spiritual light appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. Tier 3 Flying Sword. Qin Daoxian looked at Yang Linyuan in horror, and cupped his hands. Senior Yang, with all due respect, this apology is too precious, no merit will not be rewarded, please forgive this junior for not accepting it. Ugh, hearing this, Yang Linyuan sighed, it seems that fellow Taoist Qin still refuses to forgive my Wainer. This. Having said all that, it is impossible for him not to accept this apology. However, this is the third-order flying sword. And it is a third-order high-grade flying sword. If this flying sword was sold at the auction house, it would at least be able to fetch a sky-high price of more than 1 million spirit stones. This kind of rare treasure, the Yang family actually gave it away. You must know that the flying sword that Zhou Mubai used was only a third-tier high-grade sword. But in the blink of an eye, when he thought of the power of the third-order high-grade flying sword, Qin Daoxian was a little hard to hold on to himself. Although the third-order high-grade Feijian is worth more than 1 million spirit stones, it does not mean that you can buy it if you spend 1 million spirit stones. Because treasures of this level are of the type that can be encountered but not sought after. If you want to buy it, it depends on how lucky you are. Although I really want this flying sword in my heart. But Qin Daoxian still cast an inquiring look at Qin Xianhe. Chapter 153. Seeing that Qin Daoxian was silent, Yang Linyuan knew his concerns, cupped his hands, and said sternly, Qin Daoxian doesn't have to be concerned. My Yang family's move was indeed because Weiner acted recklessly a few days ago and wanted to apologize to fellow Taoists. Second, it is to form a good relationship with Qin Daoyu, and there is no other intention. Just for a good relationship? Yang Linyuan nodded, that's all. That's all there is to say. If Qin Daoxian refused again, he would be at a loss. He looked at the sword box that Yang Gongwan respectfully offered with both hands, and took out the third-order high-grade flying sword overflowing with spiritual light, and he couldn't help but feel emotional for a while. As a sword cultivator, Qin Daoxian is naturally a sword lover. This flying sword was the best quality flying sword he had ever encountered. Compared with the two natal flying swords he refined, there is no doubt that there is a difference between heaven and earth. Seeing Qin Daoxian accept the flying sword, Yang Linyuan stroked his beard and said with a smile, this flying sword has no name yet, and fellow Daoist Qin can give it a name, heard. Qin Daoxian looked at the body of the Feijian sword under the reflection of the Linghu Lake, emitting bursts of rainbow light, and his mind moved. Look at its rainbow light, why don't you call it the Rainbow Light Sword? Rainbow Sword, good name. Yang Linyuan nodded. After accepting the gift from the Yang family, the atmosphere among the crowds suddenly became harmonious. It was unpleasant before, but it was completely over. Under chat, Qin Daoxian told Yang Linyuan what he saw on Lotus Island and the reply of Qianyuan Jianzong. Obviously, although Yang Linyuan knew that something had happened to the Zhao family, he didn't know that the situation was so serious, and he didn't even know that the incident had alarmed Qianyuan Jianzong. Now, whether it was Qin Xianhe or the grandson and grandson of the Yang family, they were all speechless. Obviously, they were shocked by what Qin Daoxian said, and they couldn't come back to their senses for a long time. A long time. Yang Linyuan sighed and said, it's an eventful autumn. His tone was desolate, and he obviously felt sadness in his heart for the extermination of the Zhao family, who was also a big family in Guang'an Prefecture. Although his Yang family is stronger than the Zhao family, their strength is limited. If the Yang family was attacked this time, it might not be much better than the Zhao family. After all, his Yang family is also a purple mansion, and the other party has at least 2 purple mansion complete combat power, plus a group of Foundation building corps servants. If they have mental calculations, they may not be able to resist. Thinking of this, the grandparents of the Yang family suddenly felt a sense of urgency in their hearts. Not only Yang Linyuan. Qin Xianhe also felt a sense of horror in his heart. Compared with the Zhou family and the Yang family, the strength of the Qin family was simply weak. Although there is a combat power comparable to Qin Daoxian in the early days of Zifu. But although Qin Daoxian is strong, how can one person protect so many young monks and mortals in the Qin family? Thinking of this, Qin Xianhe couldn't help but worry. The grandsons of the Yang family and Qin Xianhe are now the only backbone, probably pinning their hopes on the coalition led by the Zhou family. This moment. It was only then that Yang Linyuan discovered that when something really happened, no matter what the layout and calculations were, it was not as useful as his tough strength. He believed that although the Zhou family would be nervous, they would never be afraid. At least they won't be afraid of 2 zombies with complete strength in the Purple Mansion. To tell the truth, these 2 zombies with the complete strength of Zifu, that is, relying on the advantages of the formation, can compete with Zhou Mubai. In normal circumstances, they are not Zhou Mubai's opponents at all. How could the Zhou family be afraid of such an opponent? In the final analysis, the only strength in this world is fundamental. After the Qin family uncle and nephew bid farewell, Yang Linyuan watched the 2 leave, and stood in the pavilion for a long time, reluctant to speak. Grandfather. I want to break through the Purple Palace period. Yang Gongwan's eyes were firm. Hearing this, Yang Linyuan's eyes softened and he said softly, "Are you waiting?" Yang Gongwan shook her head. "No, wait. With my water spirit body, coupled with the practice of water attribute exercises, although it is not as good as the true essence after the sword will temper, it is much stronger than the monks of the same rank. Most importantly, I don't want to be helpless when the Yang family encounters the same thing in the future, and I can only watch your grandfather do your best." "Oh, my dear, it's the family that has delayed you," Yang Linyuan said with emotion. Yang Gongwan smiled and shook her head. Sky. A flash of light passed by at high speed. In the elusive light, Qin Daoxian and Qin Xianhe stood side by side on the flying sword with a sword light of about 10 feet long. Long silence. Qin Xianhe took the lead and said, "I didn't expect things to turn out like this." "Yes." Qin Daoxian nodded. Millions of Zhao's clansmen were destroyed in one day, and the real Shinjue is far more cruel and vicious than the rumors, and there are still loose cultivators who don't know the truth saying that he is a hero. Having said that, Qin Daoxian shook his head. For the actions of Shinjuezhen, anyone who has carefully understood him will definitely scoff at him. Although this person is far more powerful than a cultivator of the same level, he is definitely a cancer in Sangzhou and even the surrounding states. He gathered a group of loose cultivators back then to burn, kill, and loot the major immortal cultivators, not because of the uneven distribution of cultivation resources between loose cultivators and family cultivators, but for himself. Shinjue Jinren cultivated a secret method of spiritual consciousness, which required a lot of spiritual medicine to restore spiritual consciousness. This is the root cause of his burning and plundering. Unlike the rumors of later generations, Shinjue Jinren is a hero in the loose cultivator. It is for the loose cultivator to fight injustice, and it is also because of him that Qianyuan Jianzong will choose to attack the Cloud Country and strive for the benefit of the loose cultivator. This statement is completely nonsense. Qianyuan Jianzong attacked the country of Yunyun, although there were certain factors that passed on internal contradictions, but it was definitely not because of a mere real person. He did not have such a big face. Only. Everything about Shinjuezhen was strictly sealed by the major families. The reason for this is because the surviving major families lost too much in the chaos of God Ju that year, and they are shameless to publicize them everywhere. Blocking the news has become a matter of course. In this way, the loose cultivators had no choice but to use their brains to guess. As a result, all kinds of legends about the real person of Shinjue continue to circulate in the market. In fact, none of these legends are reliable. Qin Daoxian also read the ancient books of the Zhou family, and then he learned the truth of the chaos of the gods. Hear what Qin Daoxian said. Qin Xianhe nodded, his eyes were deep and said, "However, this time against the corpse tide, for us, is both a danger and an opportunity." Heard. Qin Daoxian moved in his heart. He suddenly understood what the opportunity in Qin Xian's mouth was referring to. This time, Guang'an Prefecture formed a coalition army to fight the corpse tide. The demand for magic tools must be huge. In normal times, the environment of Guang'an Prefecture is relatively stable, coupled with the constraints of Qianyuan Jianzong and Zhou family. Generally few people dare to use force in Guang'an Prefecture. In this way, the necessity of magic tools is greatly reduced. Many scattered cultivators do not buy magic tools. The price factor is only one aspect. On the other hand, it is also related to the stable environment of Guang'an Prefecture. But it's different now. Guang'an is about to go to war. Let me ask, which cultivator dares to find trouble with this group of zombies empty-handed? The combat effectiveness of the monk army will be sharply reduced to a very low level, not to mention aggression against others, even if it is strong enough if it is not beaten by others until it cannot find bay. The same is true for these inful things that need to be tempered by suffocation and restore their own consumption. If zombies want to continue fighting, of course they have to consume. What they consume is the corpse energy stored in the corpse pill. How the corpse chi came from, it was the chi of refining yin and evil spirits. Therefore, the corpse tide must advance steadily like the army of monks. Based on the third order yin meridian of the Zhao family, it will continue to attack the surrounding spiritual meridians and transform them into yin meridians. From this angle, bear the brunt, most likely the Wu family and the Zhou family. Of course, it cannot be ruled out that this group of zombies will give up Guang'an House and directly attack Cangzhou Xiancheng. But Cangzhou Xiancheng is the clan of the Yi family. The Yi family is the most powerful family in Cangzhou. Zombies with complete strength in the two purple houses want to trouble the Yi family, no doubt they are looking for death. Even if Xinjue Jinren left enough hands for the Sun brothers, it would be difficult to find trouble with Cangzhou Xiancheng in the first place. If it was Qin Daoxian, he would definitely take down Guang'an Mansion step by step. Then he transformed all the spiritual meridians of Guang'an Prefecture into yin meridians, refined the army of zombies, and attacked Cangzhou Xiancheng in one fell swoop. In this way, the entire Cangzhou can be turned into a zombie country step by step. Therefore, the first target the opponent will attack next is likely to be the Wu family. Because the Zhou family is too strong, they are not opponents at all. The Wu family is just right. It has a huge population and is not strong enough to pose a threat to the Sun brothers. It is the best target. Of course. The Zhou family will not wait for the other party to attack. Next, they will invite their colleagues from Guang'an Prefecture to form a coalition army and break through the corpse refining grounds on Lotus Island. Landed with the light. Qin Daoxian and Qin Xianhe once again set foot on the land of Shuanghu Island, feeling a burst of fulfillment in their hearts. Go and do your business, I'll go to the clan school to see. Qin Xianhe is now teaching Chen's children to learn Guiyuan Gong in ethnic studies. It seems that certain progress has been made. Thought about it. Qin Daoxian stopped Qin Xianhe and said, Uncle 13, I think the situation has changed now. The step-by-step training plan we planned before may have to be discussed in the long run again. What do you mean? Qin Daoxian nodded. What I mean is, take Tongmai pill for the first batch of immortal seedlings with blessing characters to help them embark on the path of cultivation. This. Qin Xianhe frowned, then nodded, that's all it takes. He knew that now that the corpse was breaking out, Shuanghu Island would not know when it would be in danger. It's not enough to develop slowly and steadily as before, we have to make big strides forward. Including the 9-year compulsory training system established by Qin Daoxian before, it must also be cancelled. Continue to use the system of entering the factory at the age of 8. He knew that there would be a turmoil in Guang'an that would spread throughout the whole province. Although the Zhou family will form a coalition to destroy the land of corpse refining on Lotus Island. But with the chaos of Xinjue that Qin Daoxian knew in ancient books, the zombies refined by the real people of Xinjue would never be so easily exterminated by the monks of Guang'an Prefecture. The two sides are likely to break out into a protracted war. The Qin family must do everything possible to enhance the family's strength. As for being low-key and afraid of revealing his strength, they were all thrown aside by Qin Daoxian. Now, as long as the Sun brothers dare to attack Shuanghu Island with their corpse servants, I am afraid that the entire Shuanghu Island, except Qin Daoxian, will not be able to survive. This kind of life and death moment, but also a low-key development. Mr. Qin Daoxian shouldn't have hoped that the Sun brothers could not find the location of Shuanghu Island. What is the difference between this and stealing the bell? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian immediately felt a sense of urgency. Qin Xianhe also knew the seriousness of the matter and immediately agreed with Qin Daoxuan's suggestion. Daoxian, you can decide the family affairs in the future, and you don't need to ask my opinion again. Seeing that Qin Daoxian wanted to speak, Qin Xianhe raised his hand and said solemnly, I know that with the current strength of our Qin family, the possibility of wanting to survive this corpse chaos is extremely low, so we must recklessly strengthen the family's strength. I'm afraid it'll drag you down. Uncle 13. You don't have to say anything, you just need to remember that you are the patriarch of the Chen clan now, and you are in the safety of the entire clan. Chen Xianhe raised his hand. Heard the words. Chen Daoxian thought of the Zhao family whose entire clan was slaughtered, and nodded solemnly. I see, Uncle 13. Chapter 155, 3 months later. In the courtyard of Lingfu. Chen Daoxian looked at the strange-looking cylindrical instrument in his hand, his face full of excitement. Sure enough. Chen Daoxian said excitedly. Ever since he obtained the alchemy inheritance and learned the above-mentioned alchemy surgery, Chen Daoxian suddenly wondered if he could learn from some methods from his previous life to refine elixirs. There are several methods of refining medicine pills in the world of immortal cultivation. The mainstream method is fire alchemy. Fire alchemy means that the alchemist uses the alchemy furnace to remove the impurities in the elixir a little bit with the two flames of civil and military, and finally combines the essence left by the elixir into elixir. To sum it up, there are probably two steps: first, removing impurities, and second, synthesizing it into pills. Unlike the alchemy, these two steps of alchemy are very difficult. Whether it is to remove the impurities in the elixir, or to finally synthesize the elixir into a pill, the cultivator needs to use his spiritual sense and infuriating qi carefully, and make no mistakes in the middle. Otherwise, the impurities will not be removed cleanly, and the result will be waste pills. Although it is said that the waste pill has a certain medicinal effect, but compared with the medicinal effect, the erysipelas is more terrifying. Eating waste pills to eat dead people is no joke. Similarly, the impurities in the elixir have been removed, and if the final synthesis of the pill is not mastered, it will also fall short. For example, if the heat is not well controlled, and the strong tongue of fire directly burns the elixir to dryness. In short, the failure rate of alchemists in refining medicine pills is often higher than that of alchemists. Theoretically speaking, a batch of medicinal pills can be refined into 10 pills at most. But even an experienced first-order high-grade alchemist would be difficult to refine 10 first-grade low-grade elixir in one furnace, and it would always be necessary to refine a few of them. It's not that the alchemist did it on purpose, but it was too difficult to make 10 pills. You know, to divide a pot of medicinal herbs into 10 parts, the alchemist needs to be distracted at the same time, and remove the impurities from each part of the elixir, and finally combine the 10 parts of the elixir into elixir. In this process, no mistakes can be made. This kind of perverted request is difficult for even a senior alchemist to meet. And Chen Daoxuan's whim. In the first step of alchemy, a special instrument called a centrifugal wall breaker was used to remove the impurities in the elixir. The working principle of this instrument is to use the different qualities of different components in the elixir to stratify the different components under the high-speed rotation of the centrifugal wall breaker. Among them, impurities are divided into one layer, and the essence of elixir is divided into another layer. Finally, use gravity to take out the layered elixir essence. In this way, the alchemist does not need to be distracted and control the flame to remove impurities. Waiting for the essence of the elixir to leak out directly under the centrifugal wall breaker, and then synthesizing it into a pill is done. And the alchemist can also control the speed at which the essence of the elixir leaks. For example, some alchemists can synthesize pills at a high speed, so they can adjust the speed at which the essence of the elixir leaks faster by controlling the valve. Some alchemists are slow in synthesizing pills, so they can slow down the speed a bit, which is very humane. In this way, there will be no more wasteful refining of medicinal pills. A traditional alchemist removes the impurities in the 10 pills at the same time, and then concocts 10 pills at the same time. The kind of alchemist that Chen Daoxian envisioned would only need to concentrate on refining one medicinal pill, and the centrifugal wall breaker would do the rest. Under such conditions, just put a pig demon to operate, and it is estimated that practice makes perfect after a long time. After 3 months of experiments, Chen Daoxian finally refined this special magic weapon. According to the function of the centrifugal wall breaker he refined, when refining different medicinal herbs, the alchemist only needs to equip the corresponding number of centrifugal wall breakers according to the quantity of elixir. It is like refining the lowest level first-order low-grade spiritual pill, the Qi Hui pill. 3 elixir are required. At this time, only 3 centrifugal wall breakers are needed to extract the essence of the elixir at the same time. Finally, the essence of the spiritual liquid in the 3 centrifugal wall breakers is taken out from the bottom of the instruments, and then combined into a pill. Greatly improved the alchemy efficiency and success rate of alchemists. And these 2 points are directly related to the profit of the pill. If other alchemists refine a pot of elixir, the success rate is 70%, and you are 100%, the profit gap is huge. The success rate of a pot of elixir is 70%. If the cost is 100 spirit stones, the price is 50 spirit stones, and the profit is 250 spirit stones. If the success rate is 100%, the profit is 400 spirit stones, and the profit rate has suddenly increased by 60%. In addition to the improvement in the efficiency of alchemists, the profit margin is definitely far higher than that of the Qin family's Hongyin magic tool factory, which will become the second pillar industry of the Qin family. It is said that alchemists are the most profitable industry, and they are right. Chen Daoxian secretly said. Beautifully put the centrifugal wall breaker and the related jade slips for refining this magic tool into the storage bag. Chen Daoxian stood up. It is too late to popularize this magic tool now. Because according to the agreement, today happened to be the day when the Zhou family invited colleagues from Guang'an to discuss the formation of a coalition army. Such a long time has passed. With the ability of the Zhou family, it must have been notified to the various families and loose cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture. The annihilation of the entire Zhao family caused a huge panic among the scattered cultivators in Guang'an Prefecture. After all, in the eyes of the loose cultivators, the Zhao family is the second largest family after the Zhou and Yang families, and the number of cultivators in the family is almost the same as that of the Wu family. Such a big family, if it is destroyed, it will be destroyed. Not to mention other small families and loose cultivators. This moment, everyone was apprehensive. There is no impermeable wall in the world, and the news that the Zhao family in Guang'an Prefecture was exterminated soon spread throughout Sangzhou. Even the reason for the destruction of the Zhao family was deliberately spread by the Zhou family. The chaos of corpses, the real person, and all kinds of information that made people's eyebrows jump, stimulated the major families of Guang'an Prefecture to restless. Just when the heart is floating, Qianyuan Jianzong sent a message again, turning Sangzhou into a new war zone. This time, Sangzhou and other Wan Xinghai monks will record their military exploits according to the strength and number of zombies killed. At that time, Qianyuan Jianzong will send special military record personnel to come to Sangzhou to record the military exploits. This news immediately caused an uproar in the entire Sangzhou cultivation world. Qianyuan Jianzong really didn't care, and took this corpse mess as a test for Sangzhou cultivators. Some people of insight can see that there is a certain degree of military training in this. As for why Qianyuan Jianzong wanted to train troops in Sangzhou, its purpose is self-evident. Izumo country. Zhenangguan. For more than 50 years, Sangzhou cultivators lost Zhenangguan, which has never been forgotten. On the contrary, with the victories of other fronts, the loss of Zhenangguan was particularly dazzling. Coupled with the loss of Zhennan Pass, it poses a serious threat to the defense system built by Qianyuan Jianzong. Therefore, in terms of emotion and reason, Qianyuan Jianzong is bound to take back Zhenangguan. Before that, the suppression of the corpse chaos in Guang'an was just a small test for the Sangzhou cultivators. If the mere corpse can't be resolved, let alone the recovery of Zhenangguan. Anyway, most of the cultivators in the outside world think so. As for Shinjue Zhenren, it was ignored by Qianyuan Jianzong intentionally or unintentionally. Chapter 156. Limba Island. When Qin Daoxian arrived at Lingbei Island, he found that the port of Guang'an was already seriously congested. This was the time when he had seen the most ships in Guang'an port. Although there are usually too many of these ships. But at this moment, the sails of Guang'an port are almost larger than the city circle of Guang'an, stretching hundreds of miles on the sea. Feeling the solemn atmosphere of Guang'an Prefecture, Qin Daoxian took a deep breath and flew towards the Zhou family's residence in Xianqing of Guang'an Prefecture. For the sake of convenience, Guang'an Prefecture directly lifted the Forbidden Air formation today. Qin Daoxian remembered that the last time Guang'an Mansion came into contact with the air-forbidding formation was when the mermen attacked Guang'an Mansion. It's just that at that time everyone was playing with the mentality of watching a play. But this time, everyone was obviously not in the mood to watch the play. After all, the bones of the millions of Zhao family members are not yet cold. The facts of Shui Linlin told them that this time, the catastrophe of the monks in Guang'an Prefecture is coming. The light flashed away. Landed at Zhou's residence in the blink of an eye. Speaking of which, this is the second time Qin Daoxian has come to the Zhou family's residence. The last time he came here, he was looking for Zhou Mubai to seek Qin Xian's method of building a foundation. This time, it was for the common destiny of the monks in Guang'an. Although Qin Daoxian knew it well, Qianyuan Jianzong probably arranged a secret hand. But he knew better that Qianyuan Jianzong might sacrifice the monks of Guang'an House in order to destroy the real Shenjue. They are not only the front line on the bright side, but also the bait to lure the gods. If you think that Qianyuan Jianzong has arranged a secret hand, the monks of Guang'an House can sit back and relax, and it is estimated that they will not even know how they died. This point, Zhou clan head and Zhou Mubai also saw clearly. Therefore, their faces are very solemn at the moment, and they don't seem to have a backhand at all. The foundation building cultivator in Guang'an Mansion couldn't help but feel heavier when he saw the expression on the Zhou family's ancestor. Brother Zhou. Seeing Zhou Mubai, who was welcoming the fellow practitioners in front of the resident palace dojo, Qin Daoxian bowed his hands and said, Brother Qin. Seeing Qin Daoxian, Zhou Mubai, who had been on the verge of life and death, showed a smile and said, Go ahead and sit down and talk later. Okay. Qin Daoxian nodded and walked into the palace. Step into the palace. The interior is almost full of monks. Although this palace is extremely huge, normally it can accommodate tens of thousands of monks. But this time, more base-building monks came to Guang'an, estimated to be nearly 50,000. This time, almost all of the foundation-building cultivators in the loose cultivator group came. There is no way, the psychological impact of the destruction of the Zhao family was too great, and everyone was looking for a backbone at this moment. The powerful Zhou family undoubtedly has the qualifications to be the backbone. As for the Guang'an Immortal League, it is completely ignored by everyone. Usually it's okay to go to Lingzhou City to do business, but when it's time to work hard, you have to look at the Zhou family. No monk is a fool in this matter. Followed Qin Daoxian into the hall. The cultivators who recognized him gave him a place, bowed their heads slightly, and showed a respectful attitude. This is the second sword cultivator in our Guang'an prefecture. Right. I heard that he is a monk from a small family. Really terrifying talent. Everyone communicated with each other and talked a lot. In fact, there is no need to listen carefully. Just by looking at the expressions of the crowd, Qin Daoxian knew that they were talking about him. But Qin Daoxian didn't care at all. With his current strength, he doesn't care about these discussions anymore. Before he knew it, he was no longer on the same level as the foundation establishment monks present. Even if it is the most basic real essence, Qin Daoxian's real essence is far higher than that of the late foundation building cultivator in terms of quality and quantity. Not to mention the bonus of Kendo realm to strength. For various reasons, Qin Daoxian now stands at the height of a cultivator of the Zifu. Was thinking. A monk from the Zhou family trotted over, bowed his hands at Qin Daoxian, and said, Senior Qin, where is your position? This Zhou family cultivator is also a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building, so he actually called him senior. Chen Daoxian knew that all this was a change brought about by strength. If he is not a sword cultivator, but a cultivator in the early stage of foundation establishment, then he is no different from other foundation cultivators in the hall. Not to mention being invited to the high platform of the main hall. A discerning person can see that those who can sit on the high platform are either strong or have a deep family background. There are only a few people in that Chen Daoxian knows. They were Zhou Minghe, the head of the Zhou family, Yang Linyuan, the head of the Yang family, Wu Guangyi, the head of the Wu family, and a Zifu cultivator whom Chen Daoxian had never seen before. It was estimated that he was a Zifu loose cultivator. You must know that it is quite rare for a scattered practitioner to cultivate to the Purple House. At least it is quite rare in Wangxinghai, but it is very common in the battlefield of Izumo. The one in front of him seems to have come back from the battlefield of Izumo on purpose. Because Chen Daoxian was on him, he could feel an aura very similar to Zhou Mucheng. That is a kind of murderous and evil spirit left after a long-term fight. With this murderous aura, just staring at an ordinary foundation cultivator can make the foundation cultivator feel weak. But this murderous aura had no effect on Chen Daoxian. He is someone who has even fought against the zombies who have completed the Purple Mansion. Even if he is far from being the opponent of the Zifu complete zombie, Chen Daoxian can no longer be suppressed by this level of momentum. Even Chen Daoxian could hold Zhou Mubai's aura, let alone the Zifu cultivator in front of him. Glancing at Chen Daoxian, the cultivator of Zifu who was wearing a red Taoist robe, full of red hair, and a face of wanton insolence laughed loudly. It is said that in addition to Zhou Mubai, our Guang'an residence has a second sword cultivator. See you today, really extraordinary. Brother Zhang is joking, is there anything ordinary about Jianxiu? Zhou Minghe said with a smile. Yes. Of course there is. The cultivator of Zifu, who was called Brother Zhang by Zhou Minghe, shook his head. Jianxiu is also divided into strong and weak. Although Jianxiu claims to be the number one in attacking at the same level, it is not absolutely invincible at the same level. There are ordinary cultivators like me who can rival sword cultivators of the same level. Speaking of this, he paused. Isn't the servant of Shinjue Jinren a typical example? Everyone was silent when they heard him say that God is a real person. Obviously. Shinjue Jin is a taboo for everyone. After all, the damage this person once brought to the family here is too great. Chen Daoxian walked up to the crowd, bowed his hands in a salute, and said, Daoxian has seen all the seniors. Take a seat. Zhou Minghe said with a smile. Chen Daoxian cupped his hands again and sat on the seat. His seat was arranged between Wu Guangyi and Zhou Minghe, the second position from the top. Sitting high on the throne of the main hall, looking down at the monks below, Chen Daoxian couldn't help but feel a different feeling in his heart. Today's seat not only symbolizes strength, but also the status of each family in Guang'an in the future. Unconsciously, the Qin family on Shuanghu Island has come to where it is today under the influence of Chen Daoxian. Chapter 157. You fellows. Inside the main hall. Zhou Minghe, the head of the Zhou family, resounded throughout the audience, and immediately suppressed the buzzing discussion below. Chen Daoxian sat on the throne of the high platform, looking at the dark crowd below, silent. Seeing that the hall has returned to quiet, Zhou Minghe nodded and continued, everyone should know that the entire Zhao family was destroyed 3 months ago. Today, I, the Zhou family, the Yang family, the Wu family, and the Chen family, invite all of you to come here, just to discuss how to solve the corpse on Lianhua Island. Mess. If you have any opinions, you can put them forward now. The words fall. There was another quarrel below. Cough. The manna was agitated, and everyone felt their whole body tighten slightly, and the hall became quiet again. Zhou Laozu, at this time, a loose cultivator in the later stage of foundation building stood up and cupped his hands. Since our Guang'an people are gathered here today, we must be willing to obey the leadership of the Zhou family. So, what to do next? The Zhou family just comes up with the Articles of Association, and they'll just do it. It's extremely, your Zhou family said, we will do it accordingly. Right. The response below became a chorus. Seeing this scene, Zhou Mingho nodded with satisfaction and said, that being the case, I suggest that our Guang'an monks form a coalition army, which will be led by my Zhou family. And invite the powerful monks from Guang'an Prefecture to be the leaders, command this army of monks, and wipe out the corpses on the Lotus Island together. Okay. That's a good move. That's a good idea. In the main hall, the cultivators kept nodding their heads. Chen Daoxian didn't need to look at it to know that those who took the lead in speaking among these loose cultivators were basically arranged by the Zhou family deliberately. Of course. In essence, everyone hopes to follow the Zhou family and survive this catastrophe safely. Otherwise, the monks in Guang'an Mansion are not fools. How could they find a few supporters to make them follow him? Since everyone agrees to form a coalition army, then I hereby announce that the Guang'an Prefecture Coalition Force will be officially established immediately. Say it. Zhou Mingho continued, cultivators who are interested in joining the coalition army can sign up to join the army at my Zhou family cultivator after this meeting. Although they are not on the front line of the Izumo kingdom in this battle against the corpse tide, they can also obtain military exploits, said. He pointed to the red-haired Taoist beside him and said loudly, this is Dao Yu Zhang, who was transferred from the front line by Qianyuan Jianzong, who is responsible for recording everyone's military exploits. Many of the loose cultivators present have been to the battlefield of Izumo. Naturally know the military merit system of Qianyuan Jianzong. It can be said that the military merit system of Qianyuan sword sect is the biggest reason why one Xinghai loose cultivator can rise in just 400 years. Otherwise, with the monopoly of the cultivators in Wangxinghai on the resources of the cultivators, let alone the rise of the loose cultivators, even the aura of ordinary cultivation cannot be guaranteed. The Taoist surnamed Zhang heard the words, stood up, bowed his hands to everyone, and then sat down. Everyone seemed to be unfamiliar with this cultivator of the Z residence surnamed Zhang, and after looking at him curiously, they stopped paying attention. Everyone still trusts the fairness of Qianyuan Jianzong's record of military exploits. This is the foundation of Qianyuan Jianzong's attack on Izumo, and there can be no problems. Look, everyone. Zhou Mingho waved his sleeves and saw a vivid map of light and shadow appearing in everyone's sight over the hall. Chen Daoxuan's eyes narrowed, and he immediately recognized that this map of light and shadow was the map of Guang'an Prefecture. The center of the map is Limba Island at the foot of everyone. Lingbi Island is highlighted on the light and shadow map. Except Lingbei Island, the east of the map is the Lotus Island occupied by the corpses, and the northwest of the Lotus Island is the Wu family's Fengwu Island. The three islands of Lingbei Island, Wujia Fengwu Island, and Lianhua Island of Zhou's family just formed a zigzag-shaped terrain on the map. Yang's Jinwu Island is above Lingbei Island, which is due north. As for the Shuanghu Island of the Chen family, it is the farthest from everyone, and it is located in the rear of Guang'an Prefecture, which is due west of Lingbei Island. Theoretically, for the corpse tied on Lotus Island to spread to the Chen family's Shuanghu Island, the three defense lines of the Wu family, the Zhou family and the Yang family must be broken. With the Sun brothers' mere 2 purple houses, it is obviously impossible to achieve. Inside the main hall, Zhou Mingho continued, according to the terrain, I divided Guang'an Prefecture into 5 defense areas, namely the Central Defense Area, the Eastern Defense Area, the Southern Defense Area, the Northern Defense Area, and the Western Defense Area. Zhou Mingho paused. You can also see from the map that the Eastern Defense Zone has direct contact with Lotus Island, and will also be the front line of our coalition to fight against the corpse tide on Lotus Island. Therefore, the commander of this defense must have extraordinary strength. Therefore, I recommend my Zhou family Tianjiao Zhou Mubai to be the commander of this defense area. After, Zhou Minghe looked around the people in the hall. Everyone nodded. The shadow of the famous tree, Zhou Mubai assumed the post of the commander of the Eastern Defense Zone, and no one objected. In fact, even if Zhou Gol served as the commander of the coalition, no one would object. After all, Zhou Mubai's strength is there, and he was able to rank in the Zifu Tianjiao list at the age of less than 100 years old. His achievements were all killed by the flying sword in his hand. Seeing that there is no objection from the crowd, Zhou Minghe continued to announce, the Central Defense Zone will be located on Lingbei Island, and I will be in charge of the old man himself, and the commander of the Southern Defense Zone will be Zhou Mingyue, the third elder of the Zhou family. The Northern Defense Area is led by Yang Linyuan, Yang Daoyu, as for the Western Defense Area. Zhou Minghe paused, Chen Daoxian Chen Daoyu will be the leader. Boom! It is good to say that in the end, the commander of the Western Defense Zone suddenly caused an uproar off the field. Immediately, some monks stood up against it. Zhou Laozu, we don't have any opinion on the arrangement of your first 4 Defense Zone commanders, but the candidates for the commander of the Western Defense Zone are still up for discussion. Yeah, old ancestor Zhou, although Daoyu Chen is a sword cultivator, but after all, he is only a foundation-building cultivator. Why not send a cultivator from the Zhou family to be the commander of the Western Defense Zone? Patriarch Zhou, fellow Daoist Chen, Lei Zhen, have a straight temper, don't take offense, I think, isn't this a nonsense? That is. Let's choose the senior Zifu from the Zhou family to be the commander of the Western Defense Zone. Chen Daoxian couldn't help frowning when he saw the indignant rants of the monks in Guang'an Mansion. He didn't know why he became the commander of the Western Defense Zone. Although the Western Defense Zone is in the rear, basically there will be no wars, but it is a bit difficult to convince the commander to have a foundation-building cultivator assume the position. It is also a loss that Chen Daoxian is a sword cultivator, and his combat power is far superior to that of the cultivators of the same rank. Otherwise, some cultivators of the foundation establishment period might come out and ask him for advice. As long as Chen Daoxian is defeated, even old ancestor Zhou cannot continue to push him to be the commander of the Western Defense Zone. Seeing that everyone was so opposed to Chen Daoxian as the commander of the Western Defense Zone, Zhou Minghe also had a headache. Let Chen Daoxian serve as the commander of the Western Defense Zone, and Zhou Minghe naturally has his own considerations. Chapter 158, Compared to the other 4 zones. The Western Defense Zone is the least likely to encounter war, and there are no decent big families in the west of Lingbei Island, let alone the cultivators of the Zifu. If you want to take care of the Western Defense Area, you can only send cultivators from the Zifu from the Zhou family. Only. How can the Zhou family dare to divide too much of the Zifu battle power out? You must know that it is not only the Sun brothers who are full of strength in the Purple Mansion, but also the peerless murderer Shin Zhuzhenren. At that time, once the war erodes, Lingbei Island and other spiritual veins in the Zhou family's jurisdiction were attacked, and the Zhou family might not even be able to recruit the cultivators of the Zifu. Thus, it might be better not to split up at the beginning, but to concentrate on the eastern and central zones. Especially the Eastern Defense Zone headed by Zhou Mubai. Say it again. The main purpose of setting up the Western Zone is not combat. It is to prevent this group of sinister things from passing through the Wangxinghai underwater world and attack the rear islands of Guang'an Prefecture, disrupting the deployment of Guang'an Prefecture's coalition forces. In this way, the strength requirements for the Western Defense Zone are not so high. With Chen Daoxian's strength, he is fully qualified for this position. Without any choice. After Zhou Minghe's voice transmission communicated with Chen Daoxian, he said with a tough attitude, since you agree to join the coalition army, you must abide by the rules set by my Zhou family, otherwise, you should ask for another one. This time, everyone is no longer noisy. They gathered here, not to seek shelter from the Zhou family. Now in the entire Guang'an Mansion, except for the Zhou family, no other family can give them a sense of security. Now look at old ancestor Zhou's anger, how everyone dared to talk. But there are always those who are not afraid of death. Lei Zhen is a typical example of a loose cultivator who is not afraid of death. Seeing him jumping out of the crowd, he cupped his hands and said, "Ancestor Zhou, everyone, I am willing to join the coalition, but I am unwilling to accept the leadership of a monk in the early stage of foundation building. They all say that swordsmen attack Wushuang, and I have not learned Lei Zhen before." Saying that, he looked at Chen Daoxian with burning eyes. "Lei Zhen, you bastard." Zhou Minghe was very angry with him. But thinking of Lei Zhen's reputation among loose cultivators, it's not easy to drive him out at this moment. After all, this time to exterminate the corpse tide, the cultivators of Guang'an Mansion must work together, especially the large number of loose cultivators. And Lei Zhen is one of the representative figures in the foundation building scattered cultivator. This moment, Chen Daoxian knew that he could no longer be silent. To a certain extent, the division of several major defense zones in Guang'an Prefecture is also the sphere of influence of the major families of Guang'an Prefecture in the future. Unconsciously, the Chen family has reached the point where they can divide the cake under the hands of the Zhou family. Have to say, compared with the time when he and Chen Xianhe carefully visited the immortal city of Guang'an Mansion, the change was too great. Chen Daoxian knew that all of this stemmed from his own strength and potential, not the strength of the Chen family. If not, how does the Zhou family push a cultivator in the early stage of foundation building to be the commander of the Western Defense Zone? Think of this. Chen Daoxian stood up from the throne on the high platform, his voice was soft, but it rang in everyone's ears. "Fellow Taoist Lei Zhen, right? Heard." Lei Zhen cupped his hands and grinned, "Exactly. I don't know what kind of strength you think is qualified to be the commander of the Western Defense Zone." This. Lei Zhen was stunned. He just felt that Chen Daoxuan's cultivation was lower than his, so he rejected him as the commander of the Western Defense Zone from his heart. But Lei Zhen knew that Chen Daoxian should be stronger than him in terms of strength. At this point, just look at Zhou Mubai. The first floor of the Purple Mansion will be able to beat the Purple Mansion to death in the later stage. On the third floor of the Purple Mansion, it was 1 against 4, and 2 of the Purple Mansion were complete. Not only that, with 1 enemy and 4, you can also press the opposite side to fight. One can imagine how terrifying Jian Xiu is. In a heads-up match, Lei Zhen is naturally not an opponent, but he doesn't admit it, and said in front of everyone, "It's nothing, as long as your strength can convince me." He was talking about convincing, not defeating him. The difference here is huge. Chen Daoxian even hung him up and hammered him, but he was not convinced, but it was still useless. Of course, at that point, the other loose cultivators wouldn't continue to accompany Lei Zhen. After all, other scattered cultivators were dissatisfied with Chen Daoxuan's position as the commander of the Western Defense Zone, which was based on a lack of understanding of his strength. If Chen Daoxuan's strength is strong enough. Of course no one objected. In the final analysis, as the commander of the major defense areas, it is still the individual strength of the monk. In this regard, family heritage has to stand aside. For example, in the Wu family, no one is the commander of the major defense areas. After all, the strongest Wu family is just an ordinary foundation building cultivator. Putting it in front of the Zifu cultivator is simply not enough to see. Chen Daoxian nodded, "Since that's the case, it's better for you and me to discuss it." "Okay, have fun." Lei Zhen shouted, "Go, this place is too small to be used, you can go out with me." Heard. Chen Daoxian shook his head. Seeing this, Lei Zhen sneered, "Why, you are afraid." "Do not." Chen Daoxian said indifferently, "I think it's pretty good here, there's no need to go out so troublesome." "It's good here." Lei Zhen frowned, "What do you mean?" "It's no fun, are you going to fight?" With that said, Chen Daoxian flew to the center of the hall, took out the flying sword of life, and kept spinning around him. Lei Zhen was agitated by him, and he didn't care that this was the inside of the main hall. Directly, the imperial envoy Feijian attacked him. Who knows, Feijian pierced Qin Daoxuan's figure, but not even a drop of blood came out. Not good. Lei Zhen was vigilant in his heart, raised his consciousness to the limit, desperately trying to find the trace of Qin Daoxian, but found nothing. Next moment, a voice entered Lei Zhen's ears. Too slow. When the words fell, a mouthful of Feijian Jianmang was swallowed, hovering on Lei Zhen's neck, and a strand of hair slowly fell. Qin Daoxian stood less than 3 meters away from him. Spike. At the beginning, Qin Daoxian used the technique of transforming his body into sword light to deal with the zombie, but it was difficult to cause damage to the opponent. But to deal with the Foundation Establishment Cultivator, it is simply a one-sided killing. Lei Zhen didn't even react at all, and was put on his neck by Feijian. If the two really fight, doesn't it mean that Qin Daoxian can kill him with a single sword? Thinking of this, Lei Zhen couldn't help shivering. I thought he was at the top level among the Foundation Establishment cultivators, if not the strongest. But unexpectedly, Qin Daoxian was defeated by a sword. This feeling is very uncomfortable. Although Lei Zhen did not use all means, why did Qin Daoxian use all means? In this way, the real strength gap between the two may be even greater. Are you convinced? Qin Daoxian took the flying sword of his life back to the Sea of Qi in his dantian and asked. Hearing this, Lei Zhen bowed his hands in a salute, and said, Master Chief Kendo Wushuang, your subordinates are naturally convinced. Chapter 159. The Zhou family's work efficiency is very high. Soon, the matter of the Guang'an Prefecture allied forces was completed by the Zhou family. The registration of Guang'an monks to join the army is also proceeding in an orderly manner. The residence of the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. Inside a fancy fairy palace. Here, for the time being, it is the headquarters of the Guang'an Prefecture allied forces. Within it, the commanders of the 5 defense zones and the cultivator Zhang Zifu, who counted the military exploits, sat together to discuss the specific matters of the coalition forces. The one sitting in the first place was naturally Zhou Mingho, the head of the Zhou family and the commander of the Guang'an Prefecture coalition forces. Zhou Mingho glanced at the crowd with brows, and frowned. This coalition seems to be very powerful, but there are far more problems than we imagined. He paused. Although the specific number of the coalition forces has not yet been determined, the military expenditure must be an astronomical sum. Just like the war among mortals. The monk army also needs to consume military expenses. The military expenditures here include the consumption of personal instruments, medicinal pills, magic talismans, large-scale war instruments, array materials, spiritual meridian stations, and so on. Although Qianyuan Jianzong provided a military merit system for the monks of Guang'an House, which could offset part of the military expenses. However, the major families in Guang'an Prefecture must also make a big deal of blood, especially the Zhou family who took the lead. In fact, it is normal to think about it. During the period of stability in Guang'an Prefecture, the Zhou family occupied the greatest interests, and when the catastrophe came, the Zhou family must also bear the greatest responsibility. Otherwise, once Guang'an Prefecture falls, the Zhou family will lose more than just the military spending. I heard this. Yang Linyuan on the side said, I wonder how many spirit stones Zhou Daoyu can take out. Zhou Mingho glanced at him, thought for a moment, and said, our Zhou family can take out 40,000 spirit stones for this military expense, heard. Yang Linyuan shook his right hand slightly and sighed. In this case, Guang'an Xianmeng, are also willing to take out 10 million spirit stones as military expenses. As he said that, he bowed his hands to everyone and said, my Guang'an Immortal Alliance has spent a lot of money to build Spirit Day City. 10,000 spirit stones are already the greatest sincerity. Please don't dislike it. After that, I apologized again. When Qin Daoxian, who was sitting with them, heard this, he suddenly felt that the chair under his was quite hot, and he was a little restless. How does this make him answer? One family produced 400 million spirit stones, the other 100 million spirit stones. When did the spirit stone use billions as a unit? Chen Daoxian finally understood why the big family despised the low-end magic weapon market. In exchange, his Chen family has so many spirit stones, and he doesn't look down on the low-end magic weapon market. The low-end magic weapon market earns tens of millions of spirit stones a year. Can that be called making money? Shabby. He lowered his head, feeling out of tune with everyone here. Fortunately, everyone knew the situation of his Chen family on Shuanghu Island, and they didn't expect them to pay this military expense. The reason why Chen Daoxian can sit here is not so much that his strength is amazing, but his potential is amazing. There are very few short-sighted people who can become the patriarch of a big family in Wanxinghai. Not Zhou Minghe, nor Yang Linyuan. They all know that Chen Daoxian's achievements in the future are bound to be even more amazing than they are now. Whether it is the Zhou family or the Yang family, showing favor to Chen Daoxian and the Chen family is investing in the future. At this point. Very important for big family. The connections may not work in normal times, but at the critical moment, they might be able to save the family. The chaos of the gods. So many families have been annihilated. Why did the Zhou family wait for the timely rescue of Qianyuan Jianzong, just because the Zhou family was lucky? Not necessarily. Seeing Yang Linyuan's statement, Zhou Minghe nodded and continued, in this case, we will have a total of 500 million military spending. Although this military expenditure is not much, it is enough to support it for a period of time. Hearing this, everyone nodded. That being the case, I will simply make a division of this military expenditure. Hear this. Everyone cheered up. Especially Chen Daoxian, he is the commander of the Western Defense Area, in charge of the security inspection and defense work in the western area of Guang'an Prefecture. There will inevitably be a part of the military expenses, but I don't know if I can get 10 million spirit stones. Chen Daoxian also knew. In this battle, the Eastern Defense Zone headed by Zhou Mubai will definitely receive the most military expenditure. Because in the early stage, only their defense zone had to fight directly against the zombies on Lotus Island. As for the other defense areas, the main purpose is to prevent the corpses from Lianhua Island from jumping off the wall. Caused internal instability in Guang'an Prefecture. In other words, the only real fighting force in Guang'an Prefecture was the Eastern Defense Zone led by Zhou Mubai. The other defense areas are reserve forces, especially the Western Defense Area in charge of Chen Daoxian, which is a guard force. He was satisfied that he could get 10 million spirit stones for the military. See everyone cheer up. Zhou Minghe opened his mouth and said, Mubai's Eastern Defense Zone is divided into 250 million spirit stones because it has to fight directly against the corpses on Lotus Island. Daoyu Yang's northern defense area is backed by Lingrui City, and there is no need to spend military expenses on garrisoning the spiritual veins, so it is a little less, only 70 million spiritual stones. As for my Lingbei Island, all kinds of defense measures are perfect, and the military expenditure is less, only 50 million spirit stones are enough. The southern defense area of Mingyan is located in the hinterland below Guang'an Prefecture, and it is less likely to be exposed to war, so only 50 million spirit stones are needed. As for the western zone, everyone turned their attention to Chen Daoxian, and their eyes were full of meaningful colors. As far as I know, Chen Daoyu Shuanghu Island is located in a territory with few spiritual veins. If you choose to garrison there, you will have to spend a lot of spirit stones to build the spiritual veins, plus other consumption, so you need to invest a little more, just tentatively set 80 million spirit stones. Zhou Minghe said indifferently. Who knows that Chen Daoxian's heart pounded when he heard this. Although this spiritual stone is military expenses, not his personal property. But as commander of the Western Defense Zone, he has the power to decide how to spend the money. In the end, the vast majority of this money must not slowly fall into the Qin family's pocket. If it weren't for the threat of the real person Shinju, how could the Guang'an family be willing to pay such a large amount of blood? Qin Daoxian really felt like he was getting rich from heaven. In his heart, his affection for Zhou Mingho, who insisted on letting him be the commander of the Western Defense Zone, soared. Compared to Yang Linyuan giving him a mouthful of a third-tier high-grade flying sword, Zhou Mingho gave him this great gift, which is called a pattern. However, the righteousness of this gift was so dignified that no monk in Guang'an Prefecture could say a word. Because before in the hall, it is not that no monks objected to Qin Daoxian as the commander of the Western Defense Zone. But he was defeated by Qin Daoxian directly. When he was this commander, he was recognized by the cultivators. Seeing Qin Daoxian's grateful eyes, Zhou Mingho smiled and nodded to him. Smart people don't always need too many words. This eye contact alone means that the Qin family and his Qin Daoxian have accepted each other's favor. It can be said. This astronomical military spending is too timely. Although the Qin family now has a low-end magic tool business, but unfortunately the production capacity is still somewhat insufficient. Therefore, in a short period of time, it is difficult for the Qin family to obtain a large number of spirit stones. In addition, now that the cultivators of the Fuzi generation are gradually embarking on the path of immortality, the first-order spiritual veins of the Qin family have gradually been unable to meet the needs of the cultivators of the Qin family. The construction of second-order spiritual veins has also been put on the agenda. A second-order spiritual vein requires 1 million spiritual stones. After this spirit stone flower goes out, the spirit stone in the Qin family's clan library is estimated to have bottomed out. It even has to sell some of the spirit ore stored by the family. This time, with 80 million spirit stones, the Qin family can do much more. Although this spiritual stone is only military expenses and not Qin Daoxian's personal property, he can use this spiritual stone for various investments. For example, the most basic spiritual investment. Lingmai investment is an investment that the world of immortals will never lose. The various spiritual veins built by the Yang family within a 10,000 li radius of Lingdai city have confirmed this truth. With this huge spiritual stone, Qin Daoxian also intends to implement the same plan. That is, with Shuanghu Island as the core, within a radius of 10,000 miles, to build spiritual veins. Of course, how to use the constructed spiritual veins depends on the actual situation. But compared with the Yang family, the Qin family has a huge advantage, that is, the ability to quickly process raw materials such as spirit ore and spirit medicine into products. This advantage has no semicolon in the entire Wangxinghai and even the entire immortal world. In Qin Daoxian's eyes, this world is too powerful due to the power of monks. As a result, the monks were too superstitious about their own power and ignored the power of the machine. But he is different. As a transmigrator, he has a worldview and cognition that is completely different from this world. In other words, he knew the strengths and weaknesses of both worlds. What Qin Daoxian has to do is to use the strengths of the previous world to make up for the shortcomings of this world. The shortcomings of this world refer to far more than just productivity, including institutional, economic, and even cultural. Only, if you want to change all this, you need to build on your own strength, otherwise it will be empty talk. Just like the Zhao family, it disappeared in the dust of history with a little wave. Out of the main hall of the coalition headquarters, Qin Daoxian was floating when he walked. Brother Qin. Behind him, Zhou Mubai's voice suddenly sounded. Brother Zhou. When Qin Daoxian saw each other, it was the same as seeing his relatives. This feeling is not only because he and Zhou Mubai have a relationship of life and death, but also because of the huge sum of money that the Zhou family sent him just now, making him feel extremely cordial when he sees everyone in the Zhou family. Seeing Qin Daoxian's appearance, Zhou Mubai shook his head with a smile, and said jokingly, I didn't expect you to have such a wealthy side. Hear this. Chen Daoxian was immediately unhappy and said, "Brother Zhou, you were born in a big family, how do you know the suffering of our small monks?" Shaking his head, he said sternly, "Brother Zhou is going to attack Lotus Island, do you have any specific plans?" Hear this. Zhou Mubai pondered for a moment and said, "My plan is very simple, fortify the walls and clear the fields." Fortified walls and clear fields. Chen Daoxian couldn't help frowning. Why, don't you attack Lotus Island directly? Chapter 160, Heard. Zhou Mubai shook his head. Although the tide of corpses currently entrenched on Lotus Island is not that strong, the real Shinjue lurking in the dark is a big trouble, and we don't know if the real Shinjue has left behind. It is not a good idea to rashly attack Lotus Island. Chen Daoxian frowned and said, "But according to our last investigation, Lotus Island should have only 2 complete zombies of the Purple Palace and 3 zombies of the early Purple Palace." "It's not that simple," Zhou Mubai said as he walked. "Have you found it?" The 3 zombies in the early stage of Zifu are all monks from the Wu and Zhao families. "You mean?" Chen Daoxian was suddenly shocked. "You must know that the Wu family and the Zhao family have no Zifu cultivators, that is to say, the 2 zombies in the early Zifu were promoted to the Zifu combat power after death. But how long have they been dead? Even the longest Wu family cultivator has only been dead for a few months, and the Zhao family cultivator has just died not long ago. In such a short period of time, the corpse of a base-building cultivator was forcibly refined into a Zifu zombie, which meant that the real person of Shinjue could mass-produce the battle power of Zifu. Think of this." Chen Daoxian only felt horrified. Qianyuan Jianzong wants the monks of Guang'an House to lead out the real person Shinju, which might be the rhythm that the whole monks of Guang'an House will be wiped out. For this situation. Of course, the Guang'an House cultivator was unwilling to act as such an early bird. So the Zhou family came up with the idea of withdrawing all the monks from Lotus Island close to Guang'an House. Fortunately, the people living on these islands are scattered cultivators and children of small families, and there are very few spiritual veins. It's just that there are so many mortals. In order to transport these mortals, the Zhou family and the Yang family spent a lot of energy before transferring these people to the spiritual veins within 10,000 miles of Lingbei Island. After removing these mortals and low-level monks, Zhou Mubai will build several strong defense lines on Lianhu Island to several islands of Wu and Zhou families to prevent the corpse tide from spreading to Guang'an Prefecture. Thus, feeling the pressure exerted by Guang'an Prefecture, the corpse tide is likely to spread in the opposite direction of Guang'an Prefecture. The opposite direction from Lotus Island to Guang'an Mansion is the direction of Cangzhou Xiancheng. There is the clan of the first family in Cangzhou, the Yi family. This is also the real plan of the Guang'an Prefecture allied forces, to bring disaster to the east. As for whether the Yi family chose to block the corpse tide like Guang'an Mansion, or directly send monks to exterminate them, it had nothing to do with Guang'an Mansion. Zhou Mubai only needs to firmly hold the Guang'an Prefecture defense line. As for the suffering of the Yi family, Zhou Mubai didn't have time to applaud, so how could he send an army of monks to help them? Moreover, when the Yi family suffered, Zhou Mubai did not believe that the Qianyuan sword sect would remain indifferent. Hearing this explanation, Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai smiled at each other. The Yi family has too many enemies. The Zhou family has a grudge against the Yi family, the Qin family has a grudge against the Yi family, and the Yang family does the same. In Cangzhou, there may not be a few families that do not have grudges with the Yi family. The next days, Chen Daoxian selected the soldiers in the western defense zone, and then returned to Sequoia Island with these soldiers. This time, in order to support the western defense zone, the Zhou family has seconded 10 Spirit Void battleships. Now, on each of the Spirit Void battleships, there are 100 Foundation Establishment cultivators. Add up. There are 1,000 base-building cultivators stationed in the western defense zone, and this does not include ordinary soldiers in the Qi refining period. There are nearly 100,000 monks in the entire Western Defense Zone. This is just the smallest of the zones. There was no way, in order to deal with the corpse tide and the real person, the monks in Guang'an had to unite. This is just the transfer of the monks. You know, in Guang'an Mansion, behind every cultivator, there is a large group of mortals serving him. Whether it is a family cultivator or a loose cultivator, this is basically the same. Behind the family monks, there are naturally an extremely large number of clansmen. And behind the loose cultivator, there are also a large number of slaves. Even these slaves will build cities and reproduce offspring under the protection of loose cultivators. After several generations of reproduction, the descendants of slaves generally no longer have the identity of slaves, and will automatically become ordinary civilians. Until then, these commoners may embark on the path of cultivation under the advice of loose cultivators. This is also the biggest source of Wan Xinghai's scattered cultivation. Family monks use blood as a link to reproduce offspring and cultivate monks. The advantage of doing this is that the clan is united and has a strong centripetal force. On the other hand, loose cultivators support themselves with ordinary civilians or slaves. It is possible that before his death, he will accept a few disciples and pass on the mantle. However, because the disciples do not have deep feelings, they often become passers-by in the future. If the loose cultivator who left the inheritance is powerful enough, such as the Tao lineage left by a certain Mahayana true immortal, it will be different. Such inheritance often eventually evolves into a sect, rather than disappearing after a generation or two. Of course, in the world of immortality, it is not surprising that sects have declined and eventually disappeared. For example, the Qianyuan sword sect is a line of Taoism left by a Mahayana true immortal, and then slowly developed to the point where it is today. There are also powerful people in the Shuxian family, and they are not weaker than the sect. Actually, in this world, no matter what kind of cultivation power it is, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantage of the clan's cultivation force is that the clansmen are united enough, but the disadvantage is that it is inevitable that they will treasure themselves. And the cultivation force of the sect is much more tolerant than the family. As long as they are talented immortals within the sphere of influence, regardless of blood, they will be cultivated in the sect before a certain age. As such, in terms of the choice of disciples, they are inherently much broader than the family power. In addition, their inheritance is not weak. Generally speaking, the power of the sect in the Xiao-Xian world is larger than that of the family. For example, Qianyuan Jianzong, such as Zhuaniyangzong, such as Qinghui Taoist School, such as Qianji Temple, etc. However, the development of the sect power also has its drawbacks, that is, the system is not perfect, and after it can only grow to a certain extent, it has to rely on the family power to rule the territory under its command. This will inevitably lead to instability in governance. Don't look at Qianyuan Jianzong's extremely firm control of Wan Xinghai, that is under the premise that its momentum is unparalleled for a while. When Qianyuan Jianzong shows a slight decline, the major families of Wan Xinghai will inevitably violate its laws. Not only Wan Xinghai, but also the clan forces under the other sects of Xian Yunzhu are basically the same. Someone might say, that being the case, why not completely abolish the family system and bring the entire territory under the rule of the sect? It can only be said that this idea is very beautiful, but in fact it is impossible. This world is somewhat similar to the ancient society of Chen Daoxuan's previous life, but it is completely different internally. The biggest difference is that this world is a world where great power is attributed to itself. Humans are the most contradictory creatures. They may sacrifice their lives for their ideals and the forces they belong to, but they also have no bottom line for future generations. If Qianyuan Jianzong had ruled Wan Xinghai, it would have completely wiped out all the families. What will happen next is almost predictable. Will the high-level officials in Qianyuan sword sect have descendants? Certainly. Do these high-level descendants choose to be placed in Qianyuan Jianzong, or driven out? Generally speaking, in order to maintain the long-term stability of the denomination seldom devotes resources to the high-ranking children. Because of this, after a few generations, the sect became a union of several families, and after several generations of fighting, it finally became a family. The senior sect officials will naturally not sit back and watch this happen. As a result, the descendants of the high-ranking sects often go out independently to open up a cultivator family. In this way, the problem returned to its original point, and the Shuxian family was born again. Therefore, it is not that the family system is not abolished, but that there is no way to cancel it. On the deck of the Spirit Void battleship, Chen Daoxian looked at Zhou Mucheng and Zhou Xiliang who were standing beside him, and said with a smile, "Uncle Zhou, Brother Xiliang, follow me to Sequoia Island this time, but you have to start all over again." I'm already satisfied that I can save my life. Besides, now that you are under your command, nephew, can you still treat my father and son badly? Zhou Mucheng laughed. That's not so, Chen Daoxian said with a smile, but Brother Xiliang is estimated to be very uncomfortable with Sequoia Island. Brother Chen, don't scare me, Zhou Xiliang had a sullen look on his face, it won't really be a wild place. The wild places are not enough, but there is no place for fun. That's a good feeling. Zhou Mucheng immediately applauded and laughed when he heard this. Hearing this, Zhou Xiliang immediately put on a bitter face. The crowd laughed a few times. Behind him, a cultivator in armor came over and cupped his hands. "Lord Commander, Sequoia Island is coming soon, heard." Chen Daoxian glanced at the red island below his eyes and nodded, "I see." "Yes." Lei Zhen cupped his hands and stepped back. This late foundation building loose cultivator named Lei Zhen seemed to be convinced by Chen Daoxian, and followed Chen Daoxian to Sequoia Island. Although there are as many as 1,000 base building cultivators here, but most of them are early stage foundation building cultivators, and even the middle stage foundation building cultivators are few in number. As for the later stage of foundation building, there were only Zhou Mucheng and Lei Zhen. These two, one is the 7th floor of the foundation building, and the other is the 8th floor of the foundation building. This strength is not too shabby compared to Zhou Mucheng in the Eastern Defense Zone. However, the main function of the Western Defense Zone is to patrol, and it does not require frontline combat. This power is more than enough for patrol. Even if it weren't for Chen Daoxian, the Zhou family would be able to handle this trivial matter, and there was no need to establish any Western Defense Zone. It's just that the Chen family's Shuanghu Island is here. In order to have a harmonious relationship between the two families in the future, the Zhou family will naturally plan their spheres of influence in advance to avoid conflicts between the two parties in the future. This Western defense area is not so much a defense area as it is the sphere of influence of the Chen family. In other words, now with Shuanghu Island as the center, the sea area with a radius of more than 10,000 miles will be the sphere of influence of the Chen family. Compared to the time when he could only traverse a few nearby islands, the Chen family's sphere of influence has expanded more than 100 times. It's just that the sphere of influence is now expanded, but the Chen family still faces a problem, that is, there is a shortage of manpower, and it is seriously insufficient. Chapter 161. Boom! The Spirit Void battleship pierced the sky. Soon, one after another, the Spirit Void battleships landed on Sequoia Island in an orderly manner. One after another, the lights flew off the battleship, and when everyone saw the scene in front of them, they couldn't help but look at each other. It's actually a desert island. You must know that the cultivators present have the lowest cultivation base in the early stage of foundation building. With their cultivation base, the worst one has a first-order spiritual vein to supply them for cultivation. A completely deserted island makes them feel very uncomfortable who are used to seeing high-level spiritual veins. Seeing Zhong Xiu's disappointed eyes, Chen Daoxian boosted his morale and said, although the island under our feet is a deserted island, the island is huge, not much smaller than Lingbei Island, Jinwu Island and other large islands. It is suitable to be used as the resident of our western defense zone. Besides, as long as there is a spiritual stone, it can be cultivated, so there is no need to worry. I plan to cultivate a third-order spiritual vein here for the garrison of our western defense zone. Third-order spiritual veins? That's not the same as the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture and the immortal city of Lingri. I mean, it is also one of the 5 defense areas, and we are not too much worse than others. It seems that we may still take advantage of it. You must know that we have the fewest people in our defense zone, which means that each of us has the most aura resources. Well said. Seeing everyone regain their morale, Chen Daoxian nodded slightly. Another important reason why he chose Sequoia Island as the garrison of the Western Defense Zone was that it was only a mere 400 miles away from Shuanghu Island, the home of the Qin family. With Chen Daoxian's escaping speed, it only takes a few hundred breaths to rush back. Thus, when the family encounters any danger, he can take care of it immediately. If he really let him serve as the commander of other defense zones, Chen Daoxian would decisively refuse. Because in addition to his combat power comparable to Zifu, the strongest cultivator in the Chen family only has the 9th level of qi refining, and there is not even a foundation-building cultivator. Once attacked by the zombies on Lotus Island, the Chen family would have no resistance at all. Seeing everyone regain their morale, Chen Daoxian continued, we are the first group of monks to arrive, and it will take 3 months for the large army to arrive. During this period of time, let's work hard first, open up our respective caves first, and cultivate the spiritual veins here first. It should be the hard work of the leader. Opening up a cave is nothing more than a loose cultivator like me. Yes, you are working hard, Commander. There is an adult in command of Lao. When they heard that Chen Daoxian was going to arrange a great formation for them, everyone was excited. Cultivating the third-order spiritual meridian requires not only 10 million spirit stones, but also a third-order spiritual formation. Generally speaking, you need to use a third-order array mage. However, with Chen Daoxian's formation skills and the ability of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic to store understanding, it is not too difficult to set up this formation. It just takes a little time. Chen Daoxian estimated that it would take about a month or so to complete the arrangement of this third-order spiritual formation. It is estimated that it will be a year before the spiritual pulse is promoted to the 3rd rank. This time. Of course Chen Daoxian would not wait like this. You must know that the people who came to Sequoia Island on this trip were not only the 100,000 qi refining cultivators and the 1,000 foundation building cultivators, but also the huge group of mortals behind them. Among these cultivators, some are family cultivators of a family, and some are loose cultivators. But no matter what kind of monk, there are a lot of mortals behind them. In addition to placing these monks, Chen Daoxian also had to place these mortals. He estimated that the number of mortals behind this group of monks was at least tens of millions. This is a huge project. But also helpless. Now Guang'an Prefecture is constantly facing the threat of the corpse tide on Lotus Island. Ordinary qi refining families and scattered cultivators simply do not dare to be scattered on various islands in Guang'an Prefecture as they used to. The fate of doing so can be known by looking at the Zhao family. There is no cultivator who feels that his family or his own strength is stronger than the Zhao family. Warming in a group is a wise choice. This is also the reason why everyone at that time would try their best to object and they heard that Chen Daoxian was the commander of the Western Defense Zone. What they need is the protection of the strong, not a monk who is the same as theirs, or even inferior to them. Foreseeable. As Sequoia Island was developed, the Western Division was stationed there. More and more monks and mortals will gather towards Sequoia Island, especially the monks and mortals who usually live in the west of Guang'an Prefecture. As for going to the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture and the immortal city of Lingrui to settle down, there has to be a place there. Right now, there is a corpse massacre in Guang'an House, and everyone is breaking their heads and trying to find a safe place to shelter. The first choice is definitely Lingbei Island of the Zhou family. But the total population of Guang'an Prefecture is more than hundreds of millions. With so many people, Lingbei Island can't bear it at all. The load here is not enough, which means that the land is not enough to live in. In fact, with the land of Zhoujiao Lingbei Island and the surrounding spiritual veins, there are hundreds of millions of people living there, and there is no problem at all. The burden here means that it cannot support so many mortals. After all, mortals are different from monks. Monks can eat qi and not die, they can refine spiritual energy, and they don't eat or drink. But mortals can't do it. If they don't eat or drink, mortals will starve to death. Hundreds of millions of mortals consume an astronomical amount of food every day. Large enough fields must be cultivated to feed these mortals. Therefore, it is impossible for the Zhou family to gather all mortals on several islands, which is unrealistic. Even Sequoia Island developed it. It is impossible for Chen Daoxian to arrange the population of more than 10 million on Sequoia Island. He will only use Sequoia Island as the core, while developing the surrounding islands as a food production place for mortals. Only in this way. To feed a huge population. For the time being, the situation is stable enough, and food can still be imported. But when the corpse chaos breaks out completely in the future, or Shinjue Jinren comes up with some new actions, the entire Guang'an prefecture will be in chaos. That a stable food base is very important. Only when the grain bag is firmly grasped can it be possible to develop. Otherwise, the mortals will starve to death, and the cultivation forces will not be far from decline. Of course Chen Daoxian understood this simple truth. Sequoia Island. An easy port. Several Chen family cargo ships stopped here. Cargo ship. A gray-haired old man stepped off the cargo ship on crutches. Chen Lao, please slow down. Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Beiwang who was faltering, took a few steps forward, and supported him. Thank you young patriarch. Chen Beiwang cupped his hands towards Chen Daoxian, then raised his head and looked at the fiery red Sequoia Island in front of him. Young patriarch, you're talking about this island? Right. Chen Daoxian nodded, thought about it and said, Old Chen, let me show you the whole picture of Sequoia Island. Saying that, he waved his sleeves lightly. A gentle wind wrapped the two figures, Chen Beiwang and Chen Daoxian slowly ascended into the sky. When Chen Beiwang was on Shuanghu Island, he was led by the monks to survey the landforms. So very calm. Just over an hour. Chen Daoxian took Chen Beiwang to make a rough survey of the entire Sequoia Island. See the whole picture of Sequoia Island. Chen Beiwang cupped his hands and said, Young patriarch, most of this island is a plain area. There are many trees, freshwater lakes and rivers on the island. It is very suitable for building a city along the coast. Compared with Shuanghu Island, the location here is better. Of course Chen Daoxian understood this. When Chen Jiazu chose to open a family on Shuanghu Island, it was entirely because of the spiritual eyes and copper mines on Qitong Mountain. Otherwise, choosing Sequoia Island is obviously much better than choosing Shuanghu Island. Hearing what Chen Beiwang said, Chen Daoxian nodded reassuringly, and said, Is there any problem if I entrust this city to you to build? Hear this. Chen Beiwang was overjoyed at first, then shook his head gloomily, and said bitterly, It will take at least 10 years or even decades to build a city with the power of mortals. The old man can't wait that long. I am afraid that the young patriarch will be disappointed. Chen Beiwang bowed his hands. Chen Lao, don't be pessimistic, your body is still strong. After a word of relief, Chen Daoxian continued, I know that it took a long time to build this city with mortals as the main force. What if it was built with the power of monks? You mean? Chen Beiwang moved in his heart and said a little excitedly. Yes, I want you to lead the construction of this city, Mr. Chen. As for the specific construction tasks, it will be left to the monks to complete. But Chen Beiwang didn't know how to describe it. After a long while, he said slowly, "But the old man is only a mortal. How can he command the immortal master to do things?" Chen Daoxian raised his hand and stopped. "It's settled like this, Chen Lao can rest assured, I guarantee that they will be very obedient." This. Chen Beiwang immediately thought of Chen Liangyu, the director of the family Feijian factory. In theory, the monks who work in the factory are also under the jurisdiction of Chen Liangyu. But after all, he was a monk of his own clan, a disciple of his own clan. They accepted Chen Liangji's management. Although Chen Beiwang was surprised, it was not unacceptable, and now he had to command strange monks to complete the work of building the city. This is completely different from Chen Beiwang's management of family monks. A monk, would he really follow a mortal's command? Chen Beiwang was very suspicious. But seeing Chen Daoxuan's eyes, Chen Beiwang put away all the doubts in his heart. After all, in Chen Beiwang's eyes, there is nothing that Chen Daoxian cannot do. The Chen family is on Shuanghu Island and has grown step by step at a speed visible to the naked eye. Today's Chen family has become the most powerful family within a radius of 10,000 miles. Although this strongest has a lot of water, most of it is based on Chen Daoxuan's personal strength. But with this momentum, the strength of the Chen family will soon catch up. The largest group of monks in the Fuzi generation is now 6 years old. In 2 years, they will continue to enter the factory with energy. At that time, the Chen family will really take off. At that time, what the Chen family needs to worry about is not the problem of insufficient production capacity, but the problem of insufficient market. Chen Daoxian knows that once the scale of industrialization expands, the increase in productivity will be explosive. Chapter 162. Sequoia Island. In a newly built palace. This is the temporary headquarters of the Western Defense Zone. What? Let's help mortals build cities. A base-building cultivator wearing a blue robe suddenly stood up, his face full of disbelief. "See you." All the generals in the West Defense area looked at him. "Master Commander, you'll be blunt here, we are here to guard against the corpse tide on Lotus Island, not to build a city for mortals." The cultivator in the cyan robe was filled with righteous indignation, as if he had caused great humiliation to mortals by casting the city. Seeing this scene, the other monks also showed an indifferent attitude. A monk is a monk, and a mortal is a mortal. In this world, there is only a reason for mortals to kowtow and bow for monks, and there is no reason for monks to carry bricks for mortals to build a city. Since the human race became the overlord of this world by relying on the power of monks, monks have always been high above. Kills and punishes ordinary mortals at will. In Wangxinghai, this phenomenon is slightly better. Because of the decree of Qianyuan Jianzong, mortals were protected at the most basic level. Wanting to kill mortals is against the decree of Qianyuan Jianzong, even if this mortal is a slave. But Chen Daoxian asked the monks to build houses and cities for mortals, which was somewhat unacceptable to the cultivators. This is like asking a superior leader to go to the front line of the construction site to move bricks. Even the arrogance of their own ruling class made the monks feel particularly uncomfortable. It is also due to Chen Daoxian who gave them this order, their direct superior, and the sword cultivator who made the monks of the same level look up. If other monks of the same level dared to say this to him, maybe he would have to use a sword to reason with each other. Heard the words. Chen Daoxian glanced at the cultivators in the palace. He found that even Zhou Mucheng and Zhou Xiliang were frowning at the moment, as if Chen Daoxuan's behavior really challenged everyone's bottom line. But Chen Daoxian was unwilling and impossible to make concessions to the cultivators at this moment. He said coldly, "If I remember correctly, are you a monk of the Wei family?" "Your Majesty Commander, the subordinates are members of the Wei family." The middle-aged cultivator in the blue Taoist robe cupped his hands and said respectfully. For Chen Daoxian, he was still convinced from the bottom of his heart. After all, a few days ago, Chen Daoxian defeated Lei Zhen, a famous loose cultivator, with one sword in public, which was shocking. You must know that Lei Zhen's reputation among loose cultivators is not only due to his eagerness for justice, but also to his top-notch strength among foundation-building cultivators. Even so, he was still defeated by Chen Daoxian, a monk at the early stage of foundation building. And Wei Lidao asked himself, with his cultivation in the middle stage of foundation building, he is definitely not the opponent of Lei Zhen in the later stage of foundation building. One can imagine how big the difference in strength between him and Chen Daoxian is. The reason why the cultivators regard their status as high or low is essentially because of the difference in strength. Because normally, the strength of high-level monks will show a state of crushing against low-level monks. But not including the arrogant evildoers like Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai. This kind of genius, the combat power is often difficult to estimate with the cultivation base. For them, fighting beyond the ranks is as easy as a routine. For this arrogance, Wei Lidao naturally did not dare to offend in the slightest. If it wasn't for Chen Daoxian's request that was really contrary to common sense, Wei Lidao would not stand up and raise objections. After all, this is the first official order issued by the commander after he came to the station. Very good. Chen Daoxian nodded. Let me ask you, do your Wei family choose to stay in their original clan land, or migrate to Sequoia Island? Heard the words. Wei Lidao frowned and cupped his hands. Naturally, he migrated here with his subordinates. How many tribes do you have? Master Commander, my Wei family has more than 300,000 members. More than 300,000 people. Tell me, where did they live on Sequoia Island? This. Wei Lidao was dumbfounded for a while. Indeed, where so many people have migrated here is a very serious question. Because mortals and monks are different. The monk wanted to build a palace cave, waved his hand, and it would be completed in a day or two. Besides, with the ability of monks to adapt to the environment, even if they eat and drink it is a matter of life for them. But not ordinary people. They have no house, no food, they will freeze to death and starve to death. Compared with monks, mortals are much more vulnerable. Moreover, the Wei family members are only a part of the mortals who have migrated here, and there will be more mortals under the family and loose cultivators who will continue to migrate. No way. In order to deal with the corpse tide, in order to deal with Xinjue real people, everyone had to gather together to warm up. Otherwise, if a single family or a loose cultivator encounters the invasion of the Zifu zombies, it is not much different from being sent to death. The Zhao family was so powerful that the whole family was killed in the corpse, not to mention other families. Wei Liguo was speechless. Chen Daoxian continued, the first batch of mortals will arrive here in a month or more at most. Before that, if we don't build the first batch of houses, they will freeze to death. Chen Daoxian looked around at everyone, held up his hands and said, why, do you want to see your own people or mortals under your command freeze to death? Under Chen Daoxian's gaze, everyone lowered their heads. See you. Chen Daoxian gave Zhou Muqing a look. After realizing it, Zhou Muqing immediately stood up and said, I am willing to build a city for mortals. Everyone looked at each other when they heard this. So they cupped their hands and said, I'm also willing to wait. Very good, Chen Daoxian smiled and said, it's not just that you are willing, you 10 are the commanders of the 10,000 soldiers in my western defense area, and you must also let the soldiers under your command understand this meaning and help mortals build a city together. Now is in the midst of the disaster of Guang'an Mansion. Whether it is monks or mortals, they must join hands to overcome the difficulties together. Here, don't let me hear about monks oppressing mortals. Otherwise, this seat recognizes him, and the sword in this seat may not recognize him. At the end, Chen Daoxian's tone revealed Sen Leng's killing intent. This moment. Everyone understands that the leader in front of him is not only a foundation-building cultivator in his 20s, but also a genius sword cultivator who holds 100,000 military power. The monks who have been on the front line know that just relying on Wei Lidao to refute Qin Daoxuan's order just now is enough to be executed on the front line of Izumo. The charge is of course disobeying the military order. The current Guang'an prefecture is no different from the front line of the Izumo kingdom, and it has also been designated as a war zone by Qianyuan Jianzong. Since it is a war zone, the laws of the front line are naturally enforced. Wei Lidao also reacted at this moment. He actually went around the gate of just now, and he couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. Seeing everyone was silent, Chen Daoxian nodded with satisfaction, and continued, "The second thing is about the supply of magic weapons in the Western Defense Zone. Do you have any good channels to buy magic tools?" Everyone is not stupid. When they heard this, they immediately knew that the opportunity to flatter the boss had come. Lei Zhen stood up first. His voice was like thunder, and the bombed hall roared, "Master Commander, our magic weapon is mainly for those soldiers in the Qi refining period who do not have magic tools. Therefore, I think that the first-order low-grade and first-grade middle-grade magic tools are enough. The first-order high-grade magic tools are good, but the price is too high, and only a small amount of elite Qi refining cultivators can be equipped. And in Guang'an Prefecture, the best low-level magic tools are naturally Chen's family on Shuanghu Island, which is well known." When everyone heard the words, they nodded in agreement. Seeing that his subordinates are so sensible, Chen Daoxian was very satisfied, and he finally felt a bit like being a commander. "Since you all think that my Chen family's low-level magic weapons are the best, then this military supply list will be handed over to my Chen family." Chen Daoxian immediately made a decision, "Because the amount of military supplies is large, I have to pay part of the deposit to my Chen family, otherwise I am afraid that my Chen family will go bankrupt." Ha 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 ha. It should be. As it should be. All the cultivators agreed with the Tao. "The first batch of military supplies, I am going to buy 50,000 flying swords, including 30,000 first-order low-grade flying swords and 20,000 first-order mid-grade flying swords. According to the market price, this batch of flying swords will cost 3.5 million. Spirit Stone. First, pay half of the deposit of the Qin family, which is 1.75 million spirit stones, and the follow-up spirit stones will be settled within 3 years. The Qin family also needs to deliver this batch of flying swords within 3 years." Heard this, everyone felt that there was no big problem. The only question was why there were 50,000 flying swords instead of 100,000. Heard this question, Chen Daoxian explained, "Buying too much at one time, I'm afraid my Qin family can't eat it. Take your time." Everyone nodded. At this time, as long as you are not stupid, you all know that magical instruments and some special medicine pills and magic talismans will become resources in short supply. In war, what we fight is logistics. The same is true for wars between monks. It's just that compared with the ancient wars of the previous life, the war between monks, in addition to these logistical resources, also depends on the gap in the strength of the monks on both sides. For example, a cultivator in the Qi refining stage, even if he holds the best magic weapon, he can't be the opponent of the Zifu cultivator, even if the Zifu cultivator doesn't use any magic weapon or use any foreign objects. The gap in cultivation base is large to a certain extent, and foreign objects are almost irreparable. This is the biggest difference between monks and mortal warfare. Compared to the mortal war that relies only on equipment, the monk war, in the final analysis, depends on the strength of the warring parties. Take over this large order for military supplies. The Qin family did nothing, and immediately got 1.75 million spirit stones. This is only the first business. In the future, the 80 million spirit stones will basically fall into the Qin family's pockets, in addition to the consumption of building spirit veins. If this is not possible, Chen Daoxian has been in vain all these years. Besides, these spiritual veins that have been built will eventually be disposed of by the Qin family. This is no different from the spiritual veins of the Qin family. As long as he has been the commander of this Western Defense Zone, is there anyone else who can rob him of the right to dispose of these spiritual veins? Chapter 163. Shuanghu Island. A spirit void battleship broke through the air and slowly landed towards the location of the Qin family spirit vessel. Followed. One after another figure flew down from the spirit void battleship. Qin family cultivator heard this movement, put down all the things in his hands, and rushed out to watch the fun. These days have passed. Qin family cultivator already knew that his young patriarch had become the commander of the West Defense Area of Guang'an Mansion, and he was in charge of 100,000 cultivators and soldiers. Although the Qin family has prospered in recent years, the family has grown stronger. But suddenly becoming a big family in Guang'an Prefecture, the Qin family cultivator is undoubtedly a little hard to accept. Especially Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan. It seems that some time ago, they were still worried about the cultivation resources of the monks in the family after being promoted to the second-order spiritual vein. It's only been a few months. Qin Daoxian not only brought the Qin family to a new height, but also solved their urgent need for spiritual stones. Wow! Looking at the chests full of spiritual stones in front of him, Qin Daochu exclaimed. Qin Xianhe was also a little uneasy when he saw this scene. His nephew clearly only represented the Qin family in the Guang'an Prefecture allied forces, so why did he get a position as the commander of the Western Defense District and come back? Although Qin Daoxian had explained to him the powerful relationship a few days ago. But after seeing the treasure chest of spiritual stones piled up in front of me, I still couldn't help feeling a little bit. The Qin family has worked hard for so many years. The monks in the tribe produced flying swords day and night, only to save over 1 million spiritual stones. Now the Qin family is not doing anything, and looking at the spiritual stones in front of them, I am afraid that they will all exceed the inventory in the clan library. Thinking of this, Qin Xianhe couldn't help but ask, Daoxian, how many are there? Hearing this, Qin Daoxian made a gesture and said, a total of 175 million spirit stones. This is just a deposit, and 175 spirit stones will be delivered to my Qin family in the future. 1,750,000 spirit stones, it's just a prepaid deposit. Qin Xianhe only felt a little dizzy at the moment. This speed of making money is somewhat unacceptable to him. Qin Daoxian can't feel much change now, because there are nearly 80 million spirit stones waiting for him to deal with at the headquarters of the Western Defense District. Even after deducting more than 1,100,000 spiritual stones for cultivating third-order spiritual veins, there are more than 60 million spiritual stones left. Such a huge amount of wealth is enough for Qin Daoxian to slowly implement the plan that he had not dared to implement before. In addition to this spiritual stone, a large number of people migrated to Sequoia Island next. This is different from the female slaves he bought from the Izumo Kingdom in Guang'an Prefecture. These large numbers of mortals can provide the Qin family with a large number of women who marry Qin's men. And the women of the Qin family's own family can also marry into the affiliated family attached to the Qin family in the future. And so, decades later, these mortals will be slowly assimilated by the Qin family and become the help of the Qin family. Because compared to other clans, the Qin family will always encourage clansmen to have children. With enough women, coupled with the Qin family's policy of encouraging childbirth, the Qin family will surely develop into a veritable family in Guang'an Prefecture. Unlike now, the big family that only relies on Qin Daoxuan's genius sword to cultivate his name and support it. Master Commander, you'll retire for the time being. After carrying the spirit stone, Lei Zhen stepped forward and cupped his hands. Qin Daoxian waved his hand and said, brothers who have worked hard, this is a little meaning for brothers. Having said that, Qin Daoxian threw a storage bag over, which contained 5,000 whole spirit stones. Thank you for the reward, Lord Commander. Lei Zhen took the storage bag and said with joy. Qin Daoxian nodded and watched the Lingshu battleship under his command leave. It's really convenient. If my Qin family can use this kind of spirit boat to transport goods in the future, that's the taste. Qin Xianhe looked at the Lingshu battleship with envy in his eyes. Qin Daoxian shook his head. The Lingshu battleship is not very suitable for transporting materials. The one that is really suitable for transporting materials should be the frontline transport ship of Qianyuan Jianzong. Okay. Qin Xianhe glared. I'll just say, you're still panting. The large transport ship that transports materials to the front lines of Wanxinghai and Izumo is a kind of strategic transport spirit boat refined by Qianyuan Jianzong with great energy. It can not only carry dead things, but also transport living things. It is said that the interior is a miniature cave, but I don't know what it is. Seeing Qin Xianhe like this, Qin Daoxian laughed. He still remembered that when he said that he would train a large number of refiners for the Qin family, Qin Xianhe also said that the Zhou family did not dare to think about it. Now it seems. In 2 years, the Qin family will further expand the Feijian factory. Even is not just a Feijian factory. Shuanghu Island Industrial Zone. In a new factory building. Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan looked at the strange-looking magic weapon in Qin Daoxuan's hands, and they were a little confused. Young Patriarch, what is this for? Qin Daochu pointed to the cylindrical magic weapon in Qin Daoxuan's hand and said curiously. This instrument, I call it a centrifugal wall breaker, also known as a centrifugal wall breaker. You will know its specific use later. Qin Daoxian smiled mysteriously. Finished. Qin Daoxian took out 3 kinds of elixir from the storage bag, namely, Wanlinko, Weeping Blood Flower, and Huichi Root. These 3 kinds of elixir are all first-order low-grade elixir, and the total value is about 30 spirit stones. Qin Daoyan recognized at a glance that these were the 3 types of elixir for refining the first-order low-grade elixir and the chi-returning elixir. Seeing the curiosity in Qin Daolian's eyes, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, it's good, finished. He put 3 elixir into 3 different cylindrical centrifugal wall breakers. Next second. He pressed a button on the centrifugal wall breaker. I saw the centrifugal wall breaker spinning at high speed. Qin Daoyan and Qin Daochu were dumbfounded, not knowing what medicine Qin Daoxian sold in the gourd. But it used to be less than half a cup of tea. Qin Daolian's face suddenly became serious. How can it be? She looked at Qin Daoxian with a look of shock on her pretty face. Qin Daochu didn't know about alchemy, so he couldn't see why he came. At this moment, he said with an uncomfortable expression, what's the matter? This thing separates the impurities in the elixir from the essence of the elixir. Qin Daoyan pointed tremblingly at the machine in front of him, even more shocked than when he first saw the Rongling furnace. What's the use of this? Qin Daochu still looked puzzled. Forget it, you're not an alchemist, so it doesn't make sense to tell you. Qin Daolian's face was full of contempt. Qin Daochu turned his head away in frustration. Qin Daoxian ignored the bickering between the two, and did the same, pressing all the buttons of the 3 centrifugal wall breakers. Soon. 3 kinds of elixir, under the action of 3 centrifugal wall breakers, all separate elixir impurities and elixir essence. Immediately afterwards, Qin Daoxian said, I'll turn the valve open later, and the essence of the elixir will flow down. You have to combine these 3 kinds of elixir essences into a pill as soon as possible, you know? Qin Daoyan nodded, so long has passed. She has long been a qualified first-order middle-grade alchemist, and is also an alchemy teacher at Chongping No. 1 Primary School. Refining Qi Hui pill, the most basic first-order low-grade spiritual pill, is of course not difficult for Qin Daoyan. Seeing her like this, Qin Daoxian opened the valve immediately. Next second. 3 kinds of elixir essences flowed down directly under the action of gravity. Chen Daoyan didn't dare to neglect, and when she used the technique of combining and refining into a pill, she caught the essence of the 3 kinds of elixir that flowed down, and then slowly combined it into a pill. It takes less than half a cup of tea. Is like the present Guang'an Prefecture. Auxiliary cultivation elixir and breakthrough elixir, which are always in demand, are excluded. There is a huge demand for the 3 kinds of medicinal pills, Huiqi Dan, Jiedu Dan, and Posha Dan. Especially in the eastern sector on the front line. Qin Daoxian can now imagine that Zhou Mubai must be quite troubled by Posha pill and Jiedu pill. Because of these 2 medicinal herbs, they are a must for dealing with zombies. Without them, the cultivator would have to raise the danger of zombies by more than 2 levels. Chen Daoxian felt the power of Posha Dan, and the effect was too good. Of course. He was taking the second-order high-grade Posha pill, which was naturally incomparable with the ordinary first-order Posha pill. But even so, when he and Zhou Mubai were able to kill each other from the corpse and blood evil formation of the other side, it was a great contribution to the breaking evil pill. If it wasn't for Posha pill that blocked most of the blood-shattering aura for them, he and Zhou Mubai would have been in a much more dangerous situation that day. Think of this. Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Daoyan and said, "Now the children of Fuzi in the clan, how about the knowledge of alchemy?" Heard this. Chen Daoyan hesitated slightly. "Young patriarch, they are only 6 years old." Ah. Chen Daoxian was embarrassed by the revelation, and immediately resolutely said, "Isn't this catching up with the turmoil in Guang'an? I can't help it." He glanced at the brand new factory building, and said, "Daoyan, after the results of this year's test come out, let's put the study places for the 50 best alchemy students in the Life of Blessings here. Can also be regarded as learning and production at the same time, without delay." When Chen Daochu heard this, he looked at Chen Daoxian with trembling eyes. Is too cruel. When their batch of Daoist monks entered the factory at the age of 8, he already felt that Chen Daoxian was cruel enough. Now I think that the family life is good, and the cultivation environment for the children of Fuzi will be better. As a result, the time to enter the factory is earlier, and it was changed to 6 years old. Chen Daoxuan's actions, even if the capitalists in the previous life saw it, I'm afraid they would be convinced. This has to be put in a previous life. Even if he was shot 10 times, it would not be enough for the common people to be angry. But Chen Daoxian had no choice. He really wants to develop slowly, but the general environment does not give him the opportunity to develop slowly. Now he can't wait to use the catalyst to make those immortal seedlings who have not grown up to grow up directly. The Qin family is too short of manpower. And industrial production can't do anything without people. At least before entering into intelligence, a large population is an indispensable factor for industrialization. As for letting outsiders enter the Qin family's factory, to be honest, Chen Daoxian is not at ease. In other words, he is not strong enough to resist this risk. If he is the true monarch Yuanying at this moment, then Chen Daoxian would dare to use loose cultivators or other family members to work for the Chen family factory. But now, he absolutely dare not. Since it's going to be officially put into production here, why don't we give it a name? Chen Daochu suggested. Name? Chen Daoyan lowered her head and thought. Let's call it Changping Pharmaceutical Factory. Chen Daoxian thought about it and said. Changping Pharmaceutical Factory. The two thought about it, and then nodded in agreement. The name is quite satisfactory, and there is nothing to argue against. After naming his name, Chen Daoxian looked at Chen Daochu and said, "Do you know why I came to you?" "Do not know." Chen Daochu shook his head, having a bad feeling in his heart. "In this year, I plan to expand the Hongyin Feijian factory, as well as the Changping Pharmaceutical Factory. For these 2 factories, one needs a melting furnace and the other needs a centrifugal wall breaker. These 2 special instruments all require you to refine them." "What?" Qin Daochu was dumbfounded when he heard this. Chapter 164. Looking at Qin Daochu's resentful eyes. Qin Daoxian smiled and said, "Don't look at me like that, I have to arrange a great formation for the family in Sequoia Island, especially Sequoia Island. Next, our family will build a fairy city there." Build a fairy city. Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan were attracted by his words. Is it a fairy city like the fairy city of Guang'an Prefecture? The eyes of the two lit up and said, "Of course it's not as good as the immortal city of Guang'an Mansion now, but in the future, it's hard to say." Qin Daoxian said a lot. The demarcation of the West Defense Zone means that the large area west of Guang'an House will be the Qin family's sphere of influence in the future. You must know that the family that thrives in this area is far more than the Qin family. Actually, even if the area to the west of Guang'an Prefecture is vast and sparsely populated, it really has a population of tens of millions. With such a population, there are at least hundreds of thousands of monks. It does not include people who will rush here from other regions in the future. The reason is simple. Don't look at the weakest strength of the West Defense Zone, but at the same time it is also the rear of Guang'an Prefecture, and the East Defense Zone, Northern Zone, and Lingbei Island are in the front line. For those loose cultivators who have no intention to go to the front line, or who dare not go to the front line, the Southern Defense Area and the Western Defense Area are their best choices. Especially the West Defense Zone. Because the Southern District is also the Zhou family in command. In the future, if Lingbei Island is corrupted by war, it must also support Lingbei Island and be involved in the war. Only the West Defense Zone seems to be the safest at present. Apart from preventing the corpse from sneaking around the bottom of the Wangxinghai Sea, there is almost no danger. This situation, as long as the mind is a little clearer, it is not difficult to analyze it. Heard that the family is going to build a fairy city on Sequoia Island. Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan were immediately excited. The body, which was a little tired, was full of motivation again. There is an unparalleled sense of achievement and pride in watching the family grow and grow in their hands. Including Qin Daoxian, I also feel this way now. True. With Qin Daoxuan's talent, he might abandon his family and become a loose cultivator on the front line of Izumo. He can go more smoothly and easily. But at the same time, he can never reap that sense of pride and satisfaction. What is the practice of doing? Just for longevity? If it's just for the sake of longevity, like the Sun brothers, they become inhuman zombies, to some extent, isn't it also a kind of longevity? Obviously not. In Qin Daoxuan's view, the ultimate purpose of cultivation is to allow oneself to live freely. In the human world, it is too difficult, to achieve the word happy and happy. Even more difficult than longevity and immortality. By the way, how is the infuriating temper of the two of you now? As if remembering something, Qin Daoxian asked suddenly. Hear this question. Qin Daochu's face was full of confidence, and he said, "My true qi will be polished in a year at most." So fast. Qin Daoxian raised his brows. The speed of polishing his true qi was not only not slower than him, but even 1 point faster. Of course. Grinding infuriating energy has nothing to do with spiritual roots, it's all about one's physique. Obviously, with Qin Daochu's physique, it is easier to perfect his infuriating energy. Qin Daoyan saw Qin Daochu's smug look on her face, and her pretty face was a little puffed up, and said, "You young patriarch, my true qi has only been polished to 1/3. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded. This speed is not too slow. You can build a foundation within 2 years at most. Hear the progress of their practice. Qin Daoxian couldn't help feeling emotional. Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan are the same age, and they are less than 15 years old this year. Qin Daochu will build the foundation next year, and he will only be 16 years old, while Qin Daoyan will be a little older, about 17 years old. In other words, Both of them broke Zhou Mubai's record for foundation building. Of course. From Qin Daoxuan's point of view. Although the two of them broke Zhou Mubai's record of foundation building, their true talents were still far from Zhou Mubai's. The reason why Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan practiced faster than Tianlingen cultivator was entirely due to the unlimited investment of the Qin family's cultivation resources. This kind of investment is completely irrational in the eyes of the great cultivation forces. But the Qin family didn't care. Qin Daoyan and Qin Daochu are one of the few cultivators in the Daoist generation. In the short term, Qin Daoxian also expects the two of them to share the heavy responsibilities for him. With their qi refining stage, they definitely couldn't share the heavy responsibilities for him, but after the foundation was established, they could do more things. At least in the future, it will be more pompous to go out to communicate with other families on behalf of the Qin family. It doesn't matter that the Qin family really relies on Qin Daoxian to support the facade. This kind of big family can't help but make people laugh. Encourage Qin Daochu and Qin Daoyan. Qin Daoxian left the Shuanghu Island industrial zone. Start to set up the second-order Yunling formation on Shuanghu Island. From the name of this formation, it can be seen that this is a second-order formation, and no one in the entire Qin family can arrange it except Qin Daoxian. Compared with the first-order Yunling Great Array, the second-order Yunling formation is much more complicated. Even with Qin Daoxuan's formation skills, it took 10 days to complete the formation. Qin Daoxian, who has cultivated first-order spiritual veins, knows this in his heart. The next days. It is to look at the power of creation in the spiritual stone, slowly transform the spiritual veins, and promote the first-order spiritual veins of the Qin family to the second order. This time, about half a year or so. Until then, the Qin family will have a second-order spiritual vein, which can not only be used by the clan to build foundations, but also provide enough spiritual energy for cultivation for the ever-increasing number of cultivators. After arranging the spiritual veins of Shuanghu Island, Qin Daoxian did the same and began to arrange the spiritual veins of Sequoia Island. Delayed for so many days. Seeing that the commander has finally started to cultivate third-order spiritual veins for them, everyone was in high spirits. Sequoia Island is a deserted island, which means that it is difficult for everyone to cultivate for such a long time. Change to normal times. In this difficult environment, the cultivators have long since erupted. But the cultivators also knew that at this time, Guang'an Prefecture was in turmoil, and the front line was always facing the threat of the corpse tide on Lotus Island. It would be nice if they could have a safe place to stay. Otherwise, they can return to their respective clans, but after seeing the Zhao family end, who would dare to stay alone on their original island? Master Commander. See Qin Daoxuan's escape. A senior 10,000 soldiers in the middle stage of foundation building stopped cutting trees with a flying sword and bowed to Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian glanced around the busy construction site and said, "Where's Mr. Qin?" "Qin will be in front." Following the direction of the 10,000 pawns' long fingers, Qin Daoxian saw that Qin Bei Wang was hunched over, lying in front of a huge picture, describing something to Zhongxiu. Although the cultivators are not as proficient in architecture as Qin Bei Wang, a man who has built houses all his life, since they usually open caves by themselves, they are not completely ignorant of architecture. Under the guidance of Qin Bei Wang, the cultivators quickly understood what Qin Bei Wang meant. Lei Zhen cupped his hands and said, "Old Chen's meaning, I'll wait to understand, you can rest assured, it's just that we have more people building houses. I am afraid that the number of monks who chop down trees and carry and cut stone is not enough." Obviously, Qin Bei Wang didn't understand the construction speed of the monks, so he distributed all kinds of workers according to the proportion of ordinary people. Hearing Lei Zhen's words at this moment, he couldn't help being stunned. Then according to the advice of the immortal master, how should the manpower be allocated? Qin Bei Wang said respectfully. I think 70% of people deal with building materials, and 30% of people build houses and pave roads. This ratio is more appropriate. Okay, just follow what the immortal master said. Chen Beiwang nodded. Old Chen. Just as he was talking, Chen Daoxian walked over from behind Chen Beiwang. Master Commander. Master Commander. Seeing Chen Daoxian, everyone bowed their hands to him. Chen Daoxian responded one by one, then looked at Chen Beiwang, and said in surprise, "Did you get the design of the city so quickly, Herd?" Chen Beiwang stroked his beard proudly, and said, "For so many years, the old man has built bridges and roads for my Chen family, built houses, and expanded the county seat of Changping County. It's not that the people under his command have made no progress at all. Hear this explanation." Chen Daoxian nodded clearly. Indeed, it is not only the cultivators of the Chen family who have made progress. The progress of mortals is actually greater than that of cultivators. It's just that Chen Daoxuan's eyes have been on the monks, ignoring the progress of the ordinary people of the Chen family. Take a few steps forward. Chen Daoxian picked up the extremely complicated city plans on the table. After looking at them carefully, he raised his head and said, "Old Chen, don't you have room for the inner city?" Inner city? Chen Beiwang glanced at Chen Daoxian in confusion, not knowing what he meant by the inner city. But the expressions of all the foundation establishment cultivators present changed. How they do not understand the meaning of inner city. The so-called inner city is the immortal city built within the mortal city. Such as Guang'an Prefecture Immortal City, Lingrui Immortal City and so on. Obviously, Chen Daoxian also wants to build a fairy city on Sequoia Island. And it seems that the spiritual stones possessed by the West Defense Zone are indeed enough to build such a fairy city. Only. Master Commander, Lei Zhen thought about it for a while, and said cautiously, "Our military expenses, but part of it is the military salaries of the soldiers." "I know." Chen Daoxian glanced at him and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I will distribute the military salaries of the soldiers in a lot of points. Whether it is on the front line of Izumo, or in the current Guang'an Prefecture coalition. When monks join the army, they all have military pay. It's just that on the front line of Izumo, military pay is paid in the form of military merit. In Guang'an Prefecture, the coalition forces were distributed in the form of spirit stones. Although this military salary is not high, there are a total of 100,000 soldiers in the Western Defense Zone, which is a terrifying figure. As for embezzling army salaries, Chen Daoxian couldn't do it. In his opinion, even if the military salaries are distributed to the soldiers of the scattered cultivators, they will still have to spend them sooner or later. The left and right are back in the hands of the Chen family. Why is it so ugly to give people a handle? Chapter 165. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, half a year has passed. Sequoia Island, Guanhai Pavilion. The waves crashed on the stone bench of the Guanhai Pavilion, making a roaring sound. The upper half is a human body, and the lower half is a figure with a fish tail. The enchanting upper body was exposed from the sea, looking at the harbor where the ships were constantly at the end of the line of sight, and sighed, "I never imagined that in just 1 year, the changes here would be so great." Heard. Chen Daoxian followed Luo Li's line of sight. In the distant harbor, the white sails are connected together, and most of the major families bring their own clansmen to Sequoia Island. Here is the resident of the Western Defense Zone. In the eyes of the monks of Guang'an Mansion, it is one of the safest places. Only half a year. With the concerted efforts of a group of monks, the prototype of a city has been slowly built on Sequoia Island. With the arrival of mortals, the city has gradually gained popularity and has become increasingly prosperous. Luo Li looked at the seaport city in the distance, turned her head and asked, "What's its name?" "Guanhai City." Guanhai City. Luo Li murmured, then looked at the ugly pavilion in front of her, and couldn't help but burst out laughing. "What's up?" Qin Daoxian looked at her strangely. "Nothing, just thought of something interesting." Luo Li shook her head. "Then I'm leaving. It seems that I can't trade with you here in the future. Now there are more and more people here." Saying that, Luo Li's eyes faintly revealed a hint of fear. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian smiled. "Why can't you trade with me here? I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of?" Seeing him like this, Luo Li said angrily, "Aren't I afraid of causing you trouble?" "Trouble? What trouble?" Qin Daoxian said as usual, "The so-called trouble is just an excuse for lack of strength. Since all the big clans have affiliated races in the Wangxinghai underwater world, isn't it only natural for my Qin family to have an affiliated race?" But Luo Li didn't know how to argue. Seeing that Luo Li had misunderstood, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, "Who do you think built that city?" He pointed to Guanhai City in the distance. "Isn't it built by some big family in Guang'an Prefecture?" Luo Liqiu's face was full of surprise. "Yes, it was built by the big family in front of you." "Your Qin family?" Luo Li looked at Qin Daoxian with an incredible look on her pretty face. The strength of the Qin family, although the Mer people are not clear, but they know that the Qin family is by no means a big family in Guang'an. In Guang'an Prefecture, there are only 3 families of Yang, Wu, and Zhao who can be called a big family. Among them, the Qin family is not included. The Zhao family? Hearing Luo Li mentioning the Zhao family, Qin Daoxian shook his head. "The Zhao family is gone." "No. No?" Luo Li was a little unresponsive. "What does it mean when it's gone?" Seeing her like this, Qin Daoxian told her what happened on Lotus Island. After hearing the news, Luo Liqiu's face was full of horror. "You mean God Zhu is not dead?" Luo Li's voice trembled slightly. "Right." Qin Daoxian frowned. "Is the real person Xinjue so afraid of you?" Hearing this, Luo Li took a deep breath, calmed down, and said solemnly, "You don't understand. According to the records in our clan, the true person of Xinjue did not only disrupt the nearby states, but also our underwater world. At that time, Sangzhou united the monks in Taizhou and Jingzhou to form a coalition army, but failed to strangle the real person of Xinjue. In the end, the Qianyuan sword sect sent 3 Yuanying Jinjuan to suppress the chaos of Xinjue. A late Jindan cultivator, is it so difficult to deal with?" Qin Daoxian frowned. "Tough. Very difficult." Luo Li nodded. "The most difficult thing about Xinjue Jinren is not that he is far superior to the monks of the same level, but his ability to escape." "Oh. What's his ability to escape?" In the ancient books of the Zhou family, he also saw that Xinjue Jinren was extremely good at escaping, but the ancient books did not record his escape methods in detail. "You should know that Xinjue Jinren has obtained the inheritance of an immortal from the upper realm, right?" Qin Daoxian nodded. Almost everyone knew about this rumor. The reason why the loose cultivators are so interested in Xinjue Jinren is also because of his legendary experience. An ordinary loose cultivator, he was inherited by the immortals, and he has since then swept the world. To a certain extent, the experience of the real person Xinjue is simply a classic protagonist template in the novel. Of course, he still failed to defy the sky in the end, and was directly pressed to death by the 3 nascent soul true monarchs sent by the Qianyuan sword sect. However, the damage caused by the rebellion of God to Cangzhou and the surrounding states was simply devastating. Luo Li didn't know what Qin Daoxian was thinking, so he continued. In the legend, the immortal Xinjue obtained the inheritance of an immortal in a secret space opened up by an immortal. Dongtian? Right. Luo Li nodded. The cave opened up by the immortals. She paused. In this Dongtian immortal mansion, immortal Xinjue has obtained several important inheritances and instruments, one of which is called Michin Fan, but in an instant, he can escape hundreds of thousands of miles away. Outside. 100,000 miles. Qin Daoxian stared blankly at the other party, wondering if she was talking in her sleep. What is the concept of escaping 100,000 miles in an instant? Qin Daoxian is now flying with his sword with all his strength, and it will take nearly a day to reach it. Even if it is true monarch nascent soul, it would take nearly half an hour to cross a distance of 100,000 miles. In other words, even for true monarch nascent soul, it would be almost impossible to capture the true master Shinju holding the Michin banner. I just don't know how the 3 Yuanying Jinjuan of Qianyuan Jianzong trapped Shinju Ezhenren. But think about it. It is nothing more than the use of formations or special instruments to block the space, so that Shinju Ezhenren can't escape. More than that, Michin Fan, the real person of Shinju, is said to be able to set the space node for transmission in advance. You mean, he placed the teleportation node in Xianfudangshan? Right. Lori nodded. It's too goofy. This time, Qin Daoxian finally knew why Qianyuan Jianzong sent a secret hand to solve the real Shinju. To some extent. As long as the real person Shinju does not actively expose the cave opened by the immortals, there is probably no one in this world who can discover the spatial location of this cave. Qianyuan Jianzong knew that Shinju Ezhenren was hiding in this cave, but there was no way to take him. Moreover, Shinju Ezhen's character is also extremely cautious. He only sent a group of corpse servants out to make wind and rain, but he did not come out behind the scenes. It seemed that the somersault 400 years ago had completely improved his memory, and he also knew the truth of the heavens. But this is not good news for Qianyuan Jianzong. True. With the strength of Shinju Ezhenren, it is not a threat to Qianyuan Jianzong. But there is always such a character in your hinterland, and Qianyuan Jianzong must have a feeling of being stuck in his throat. Without even removing him, Qianyuan Jianzong would not be able to attack the country of Yunyun with all his strength. Because the real person Shinju may set fire to the backyard of Qianyuan Jianzong at any time. I watched Luoli leave. Qin Daoxian fell into deep thought. He is now finally certain that the war with the Lotus Island corpse servant is nothing at all. Whether it is God Ju Daoist or Qianyuan Jianzong, I am afraid that they will not care about the outcome of this war. For Qianyuan Jianzong, the most important thing is to find out the real person Shinju. But, what is the most important thing to the real God? Also, you have been hiding for so long, why did you suddenly come out to engage in wind and rain? Could it be that you can't stand the loneliness? Too many puzzles lingered in Qin Daoxian's heart, making him feel heavy. Although for Qianyuan Jianzong, the battle with the corpse tied on Lotus Island was not important, but for the Guang'an monks, this war was a war to defend their homeland. Absolutely cannot fail. Otherwise, the Guang'an cultivator would have to hide in another state capital like a lost dog. But in Wangxinghai, there are no other spiritual veins that can allow monks from Guang'an to settle in. Even if the big clan has enough spiritual stones, they can cultivate new spiritual veins. But without the foundation of Guang'an Mansion, even the Zhou family would inevitably decline. Because monks practice, in addition to spiritual veins, they also need various cultivation resources. These cultivation resources must be purchased with spirit stones. Without Guang'an Mansion, a place to make money, where did the Zhou family get enough spirit stones to meet the needs of the Zhou family's tens of millions of clansmen and hundreds of thousands of cultivators to cultivate? The same is true for the Qin family on Shuanghu Island. The Qin family finally got the recognition of Zhou, Yang and other big clans in Guang'an House, and the family development is booming. Seeing that the family is getting stronger and stronger, why is Qin Daoxian willing to leave his hometown like this? Therefore, for the monks in Guang'an, especially the family monks in Guang'an, this battle is a must. With a heavy heart, Qin Daoxian flashed and flew towards Shuanghu Island. Twin Lakes Island. Chongping Pharmaceutical Factory. Step into the factory. Looking at the young figures in the factory building, Qin Daoxian only felt a little sore in his nose. As long as there is a way, Chen Daoxian will definitely not let such a small cultivator of the Chen family come to the pharmaceutical factory to refine the medicinal pills. Fuyuan, how did you do it? It's been half a year. Why haven't you been able to refine the detoxification pill in a perfect way? You can only make one pill together at a time. You can make mistakes. 16-year-old Chen Daoyan saw that Chen Fuyuan failed to concoct pills, her eyebrows stood upright, and she reprimanded. He seemed to be frightened by Chen Daolian's reprimand. The little girl named Chen Fuyuan, her petite body trembled slightly, tears were faintly rolling in her eyes. Cough cough. Chen Daoxian coughed lightly. Hearing this cough, Chen Daoyan, who devoted himself to teaching everyone to make alchemy, came back to his senses, stood up quickly, and bowed his head, young patriarch. Chen Daoxian nodded and said with a smile, how is it, do you still get used to studying here? Chen Daoyan knew what Chen Daoxian was most concerned about, and smiled sweetly. Compared with the ethnic studies class, there are so many more practical opportunities. In just half a year, these 50 disciples of the blessing character can almost all refine the first-order lower grades. Medicine pill. At this rate, at most 1 year, they will be able to refine the first-order middle-grade medicine pill. Okay. Hearing the good news, Chen Daoxian nodded with satisfaction. The cultivator of the Chen family finally did not disappoint him. Chapter 166. It is different from the peaceful West Defense Zone behind Guang'an House. In the East Zone, the war with the corpse tide on Lotus Island has been intensified since the very beginning. The coalition forces in the Eastern Defense Zone led by Zhou Mubai were attacked by the corpse tide on Lotus Island before they could cultivate the spiritual veins and build the city gate. Fortunately, Zhou Mubai and the 3 Zifu cultivators from the Zhou family turned the tide and stabilized the almost collapsed battle situation. Finally, the 4 islands near Lotus Island have laid a foundation. And half a year. 4 immortal cities were established. Completely block the road from the entire Lotus Island to Guang'an Prefecture. Thus, if the corpse tide on Lotus Island wanted to spread to Guang'an Prefecture, they could only tear through the line of defense set up by Zhou Mubai. A full half a year. The 2 sides surrounded the 4 city gates, and several battles broke out. Small battles are even more difficult to count. After half a year of fighting. In particular, Zhou Mubai took the opportunity to break out and wiped out tens of thousands of enemy zombies in one move, causing the Sun brothers on Lotus Island to change their strategy. They chose to reduce the scale of wars, turning large wars into small, harassing raids. So far, the 2 sides have entered the stage of tug-of-war and war of attrition around the 4 city gates. Every day, there are monks who fall in front of the city gate. Every moment, countless zombies were strangled by the coalition cultivators on the spot. However, compared to consumption, how can the monk be the opponent of the Lotus Island corpse servant? According to the statistics of the Allied forces in the Eastern Defense Zone, the corpse refining grounds on Lotus Island had at least tens of millions of zombies. Even if the strength of a single cultivator far exceeds that of ordinary zombies, it is still facing such a huge corpse tide. Especially under the invasion of Lianhua Island's evil spirit, it is almost impossible to counterattack Lianhua Island. You must know that the entire coalition army in the Eastern Defense Zone is only more than 900,000 soldiers. Among them, most of them are cultivators in the Qi refining period. Say it again. Zhou Mubai is also not sure how many Zifu-level zombies there are on Lotus Island. If it is as he guessed, the Purple Mansion zombies on Lotus Island can be refined in batches, then he rushed in, but he would not have the same luck as last time. The last time he and Chen Daoxian teamed up to get out of Lotus Island was based on the fact that the other party only had 5 zombies from the Purple House. Otherwise, 1 or 2 Zifu zombies last time will continue to be consumed. Once Zhou Mubai's mana is exhausted, both he and Chen Daoxian will be folded on Lotus Island. An island near Lotus Island. Above the city gate. A monk in spirit armor strode towards Zhou Mubai. At this time, Zhou Mubai was also wearing spirit armor, exuding a strong murderous aura. Master Commander. The Lingjia cultivator bowed to Zhou Mubai. The corpse tied at the fourth city gate has receded, heard. Zhou Mubai nodded clearly, and relaxed his clenched hands slightly. In this city gate he guarded, not many zombies dared to come to trouble at ordinary times. But the city gates of the other 3 islands are almost always faced with the invasion of the corpse tide from Lotus Island. No way, who made the other Zifu cultivators in his Zhou family not have his deterrent power? If the zombies on Lotus Island are a group of mindless and sinister things, it would be better to say. But they have 2 conductors. Zhou Mubai felt extremely regretful every time he thought about it. It would have been nice if he had insisted on beheading the white-faced zombie that was fighting against him. Because he knows that now their coalition is facing such a big trouble, this guy is all behind the scenes. Even intercepted the Wu family's cargo ship from the beginning. It was a premeditated act to attract the attention of Guang'an Prefecture, and then take the opportunity to sneak up on the Zhao family and slaughter the entire Zhao family. As for taking the opportunity to remove the cultivator from the Zhou family's purple house who went to investigate, it was a matter of convenience. If it wasn't for him, Zhou Mubai and Chen Daoxian would go there. If the 3 Zifu monks from the Zhou family joined forces to investigate. The Zhou family is now about to lose 3 Zifu battle strength. Zhou Mubai had no doubts about this. The reason why Zhou Mubai felt that the group of Sun brothers removed the Zhao family was a premeditated act, because the coalition forces in the East Defense area were in urgent need of supplies, especially the 2 medicines, Jiedu pill and Posha pill. If the Zhao family is still there, they will definitely be able to provide medicinal herb resources for the coalition forces. But unfortunately, the Zhao family is gone. Although the Zhou family is also a big alchemy family, but with the strength of the Zhou family alone, it is impossible to supply the medicinal pill consumption of the coalition forces in the East Defense Zone. And there is no detoxification pill and Posha pill. When facing zombies, the chi refining cultivator of the coalition army will be more than 2 levels more dangerous. Many monks died not under the fangs of zombies, but in the follow-up corpse poison. This made Zhou Mubai extremely annoyed. But nothing can be done. Although his strength is strong, under the outbreak, killing tens of thousands of zombies with 1 blow is basically his limit. And the other party has to give them a chance. Since the other party found out that Zhou Mubai was so fierce, there has been almost no large-scale invasion, all of which are small-scale and large-scale harassment. No matter how strong Zhou Mubai is, how can he take into account the 4 islands and so many battlefields? Tong. Master Commander, Wu Guangyi, who was wearing a spirit armor, hesitated a little. The medicinal pills shipped from Guang'an Mansion have run out again. It's only been a few days, how can it be used so quickly? Zhou Mubai looked at him and frowned. Seeing him like this, Wu Guangyi frowned and said with a wry smile, Master Commander, this month our first city gate, second city gate, and fourth city gate have all broken out more than 10 small-scale harassment battles. These 3 city gates, each city gate consumes at least 10,000 pills per day, and the speed of refining pills in Guang'an Prefecture is simply not enough. They are consuming our army's logistics. Zhou Mubai took a deep breath and said solemnly. He knew that this must have been deliberately done by the corpses on Lotus Island. Once the logistics of the coalition forces in the Eastern Defense Zone are exhausted, the so-called monks will become vulnerable. There is no detoxification pill, and no recovery pill. During the chi refining period, the continuous combat ability of the monks will drop by several grades. At that time, the balance of victory will naturally tilt towards the corpse group of Lotus Island. In terms of consumption, how could a Terran cultivator be compared to a group of zombies, and they were a group of organized zombies? The coalition forces in the Eastern Defense Zone had to burn the bodies of their comrades in time after each battle to avoid adding vitality to the enemy. But even so, there would still be cases where the corpses of the chi refining soldiers were robbed. If the logistics are not guaranteed, this situation will become more and more. In the end, the more the enemy is fighting, the more and less you are fighting. How can you fight this battle? No. It can't go on like this. Zhou Mubai's eyes narrowed. At this rate, if these 4 city gates lasted less than 10 years, the monks would be exhausted. And the most terrifying thing is not this, but the morale problem. Zombies have no fear and will only obey their master's orders. But monks are not. They will be afraid, and they will choose to desert because of the heavy casualties. If the logistics cannot be guaranteed, Zhou Mubai estimates that deserters will begin to appear in the East Defense Zone within a year at most. Now everyone kills zombies and gains military exploits, plus less monks die, everyone is overjoyed. But when the logistics was exhausted and the casualty rate increased greatly, even the military exploits could not stop everyone's fear of war. You must ask for help from the rear. At least let the rear guarantee the logistical resources of the front line. Think of this. Zhou Mubai walked towards a great hall in the city gate. This hall is the headquarters of the Allied forces in the Eastern Defense Zone. The decoration in the main hall is very simple, the only thing that stands out is the communication formation in the main hall. Go to the front of the communication formation. Zhou Mubai sent a message to Zhou Mingho who was far away in Guang'an Mansion. Limba Island. The residence of the Zhou family in Guang'an Prefecture. Zhou Mingho looked at the message sent by Zhou Mubai, sighed, and said, "Let's hold a battle meeting, and let fellow Taoist Yang definitely come to participate." After thinking about it, he said again, "Also inform Dao Yuchen." "Yes, Patriarch." The Zhou family cultivator took the order and quickly retreated. The battle is tough. Zhou Mingho sighed. He knew that fighting against the corpses on Lotus Island was nothing at all, and the real danger had not yet been encountered by the Guang'an monks. His only hope now is that the backhand arranged by Qianyuan Jianzong is strong enough. It will allow them to get through this catastrophe. Sequoia Island, Guanhai City. The main hall of the Western Defense District headquarters. Chen Daoxian received a message from Zhou Mingho and fell into deep thought. Holding a battle meeting. It stands to reason that except for the corpse group in the East Defense Area and Lotus Island, there is not even a shadow of a zombie in the other defense areas. Even some small families began to clamor to return to the clan. For those who are not afraid of death, Chen Daoxian can only go with them. As for not regretting in the future, that is their own business. In the past 6 months, Chen Daoxian and Zhou Mubai have also used the communication method to contact several times. The last time I heard that he showed great power and wiped out tens of thousands of enemy zombies in one fell swoop. How could a battle meeting be held suddenly this time? Chen Daoxian had a vague guess in his heart, but he wasn't quite sure. If his guess is true, then it will really be the time for the Chen family to take off. Crisis, danger at the same time, also means the arrival of opportunity. For the current Chen family, this corpse tied on Lotus Island is a danger, but also an opportunity. Think of this. Chen Daoxian instructed Zhou Mucheng and Lei Zhen to say a few words. Together with the light, they flew in the direction of Guang'an Mansion. The communication formation method can only be used for simple communication, and it is somewhat unrealistic to use the communication formation method to hold a battle meeting. Therefore, this battle meeting must be attended by Chen Daoxian in person. Fortunately, his current speed of escaping light is astonishing, comparable to that of a cultivator in the Purple House. It only took more than half a day to arrive at the immortal city of Guang'an Prefecture. Without stopping all the way, Chen Daoxian's escape light flew directly towards the Zhou family's station. Wait until Chen Daoxian arrives. Found out that he was the last one to come. In fact, it is quite normal to think about it. Sequoia Island in the West Defense Zone is the farthest from Lingbei Island, and although his escaping speed can be compared to the Zifu cultivator, who is not a Zifu cultivator here, and his escaping speed is not slower than him. Sorry, I'm late. Seeing Chen Daoxian, Zhou Minghe shook his head with a smile, and said, since Chen Daoxian has arrived, let's start. Chapter 167. Limba Island. The main hall of the Allied Forces headquarters in Guang'an Prefecture. That's the situation now. After Zhou Minghe finished speaking, he looked at everyone. Seeing Zhou Minghe looking at him, Yang Linyuan frowned deeply and cupped his hands. Fellow Taoist Zhou, my Yang family is not good at refining medicine pills, and the alchemists in the clan cannot even guarantee the supply of medicine pills for my own clan. The pills that ordinary clansmen cultivate has to rely on external purchases, this matter. Saying that, Yang Linyuan shook his head. The Yang family is good at shipbuilding, but they are really not good at alchemy and alchemy. Hear this. Zhou Minghe sighed, young Taoist Yang, let's see if we can suspend the supply of elixir to the clan, and give priority to the supply of elixir to the front line, otherwise the East Defense Zone will be broken, and Guang'an Prefecture will be ruined. After thinking about it, Yang Linyuan nodded with difficulty. He knew that this was not the time to worry about the cultivation of the clan. The most important thing at the moment is to resist the corpse tide from spreading to Guang'an Prefecture. It is best to force them to move towards Zhangzhou Xiancheng and leave this headache to the Yi family. This is also the reason why Zhou Mubai deliberately left a gap for Lotus Island on the front line and did not encircle it. Thank you, fellow Taoist Yang, for understanding righteousness. Zhou Minghe stood up and bowed to Yang Linyuan. Young Taoist Zhou is serious. Yang Linyuan didn't dare to care, so he quickly stood up. Speaking of it, Zhou Minghe is not only a complete cultivation base of Zifu, but also much older than him. It's just that the friendship between Zhou and Yang's family is not that deep, and their seniority is completely calculated according to their cultivation. Wait until the two sit down again. Zhou Minghe still frowned. Although the Yang family promised to allocate the supply of the clan's medicinal pills to the front line, but as Yang Linyuan said, the Yang family was not good at alchemy. Also just a drop in the bucket. And his Zhou family had already transferred all the medicine supplies of the tribe to the front line. In this way, the frontline cultivators are still shouting that the medicinal pills are not enough. Actually think about it. The 4 city gates on the front line consume an average of 30,000 to 40,000 pills per day. Although these pills are the lowest level first-order pills, they can't stand the huge number. This is still no large-scale war broke out on the front line. The two sides have been engaged in a tug-of-war and a war of attrition. Otherwise, the consumption of the medicinal pills would be more than tenfold in one day. With such a huge logistics of medicinal pills, which one can stand it, especially now that the Zhao family has been destroyed, the medicinal pill market in Guang'an Prefecture is going crazy, and the prices of all kinds of medicinal pills have skyrocketed. The qi gathering pill, which usually cost 50 spirit stones apiece, has actually risen to 80 spirit stones at this time, and the supply is still in short supply. As for the detoxification pills, breaking evil pills, and revitalizing qi pills that are most in demand on the front line, they have risen to sky-high prices. Just when everyone was at a loss. Qin Daoxian coughed lightly. Seeing that everyone turned their attention to him, Qin Daoxian said, "Dare to ask Senior Zhou, the medicine pills needed by the Eastern Defense Area Allied forces are mainly low-level detoxification pills, right?" "Right." Zhou Minghe's eyes lit up. "Could it be that your Qin family?" "Right." Qin Daoxian nodded. "In the past few years, my Qin family has cultivated a number of alchemists, but the pills they refine are of lower rank, and for the time being they can only refine first-rank low-grade detoxification pills and shattering pills." And Huiqi Dan. "Enough. Enough. Hear this." Zhou Minghe seemed to hear the sounds of nature. The most in demand on the front line is not the high-level pills, but the low-level pills used by the cultivators in the qi refining stage. There are more than 900,000 cultivators on the front line of the East Defense Zone, and how many tens of thousands of base-building cultivators? Most of them are cultivators in the qi refining period. This is the same on the front line of Izumo. It's just that the soldiers on the front line of the Izumo kingdom are basically in the late stage of qi refining. Few are like the Guang'an Prefecture Coalition Army. The army is filled with a large number of cultivators in the early and middle stages of qi refining. Zhou Minghe looked at Qin Daoxian with a look of joy, and cupped his hands. I wonder how many pills your Qin family can provide. Yang Linyuan on the side didn't hold much expectations. In his eyes, the Qin family was recognized by the Zhou family and the Yang family, and it was more about Qin Daoxian, the Tianjiao sword cultivator. As for the Qin family itself, it is still too weak for the time being. How could such a weak family support the huge consumption of medicinal pills on the front line? But the next moment, Qin Daoxian's words almost made Yang Linyuan stare out his eyes. My Qin family currently refines not many medicinal pills a day, only less than 10,000 of various first-order low-grade medicinal pills, but our Qin family has been stocking medicinal pills since a year ago. Now there is a lot of inventory, and it should be able to solve the urgent needs of the front line. Qin Daoxian arched his hands. Hear this. Zhou Minghe was overjoyed, while Yang Linyuan was stunned on the spot. Even the cultivator Zhang Zifu, who had been listening in, looked at Qin Daoxian in surprise. Specific, how many? Zhou Minghe looked at Qin Daoxian with expectant eyes. I haven't counted the exact number, but it should be no less than 1 million, heard. Even with Zhou Minghe's palace, his heart couldn't help beating violently. 1 million pills. Even if it were 1 million low-level medicinal pills, it would take at least several hundred alchemists to refine the amount for a year without a break. With such a huge amount of medicinal pills, even the Zhou family would not be able to come up with it for a while. It's not that the Zhou family doesn't have hundreds of alchemists, but that all their medicinal pills have been supplied to the frontline defense area. As much as the Zhou family refines, they send as many medicines to the front. It stands to reason that the Zhou family, as such a huge family, should have a stockpile of medicinal herbs. However, this kind of medicine pill is not like a magic weapon. After refining, even if it is sealed in a jade bottle, it can only be stored for less than a few years, and the efficacy of the medicine will slowly lose. So in general, the medicinal pills used by the monks have just been refined, so as to ensure the maximum efficacy. There is another reason. Generally speaking, it is a bit possible for the big clan to store Qi Huidan. But who would store so many detoxification pills and posha pills for nothing? If it weren't for the corpse chaos, the demand for these two medicinal pills has always been very low. It is far less demanding than the medicinal pills that assist cultivation. Seeing that everyone was so excited, Qin Daoxian couldn't help pouring cold water and said, but my Qin family doesn't have enough elixir for alchemy now. Not finished. Yang Linyuan and Zhou Minghe looked at each other and smiled, and said, fellow Daoist Qin, don't worry, we can supply the Qin family with as much elixir as you want. You just need to make every effort to refine the elixir. Extremely. Yang Linyuan nodded in agreement. Whether it is Lingrui City or Guang'an Prefecture Immortal City, a large number of spiritual veins have been built around thousands of miles. And the loose cultivators who survive on these spiritual veins have planted countless elixir over the years. Therefore, the most in short supply in Guang'an Mansion is probably the elixir. If the Zhao family hadn't been destroyed, in this environment, there would have been more and more alchemists in Guang'an Prefecture. Think of this. Yang Linyuan didn't know what it was like in his heart. Originally, I just wanted to use the method of building spiritual veins to benefits from the Zhou family, but I didn't expect to hit it right, and now it provides sufficient raw materials for the medicinal pills consumed by the front line. Otherwise, Now not only is the problem of medicinal pills unsolved, but even the raw materials for refining medicinal pills are in a hurry. Hear this. Qin Daoxian was completely relieved. Since the Qin family can solve the problem of medicinal pills. Next, let's talk about the price of medicine pills. Now affected by the destruction of the Zhao family and the chaos of corpses, the entire Guang'an prefecture's medicinal pill market has become somewhat abnormal. Especially the low-level elixir that is needed in large quantities by several front lines. It is very difficult to buy spirit stones. Fellow Daoist Chen, what is the price of your elixir? Zhou Minghe asked. Relationship is relationship, business is business. Without enough profit, the Qin family would not be able to keep refining the medicinal pills. Zhou Minghe and Yang Linyuan understood the simple truth. But if one were to buy the elixir at the current market price of Guang'an Prefecture, even with the background of the Zhou and Yang families, they would feel overwhelmed. After all, they still don't know how long this war will last. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian thought for a while and said, "It stands to reason that my Qin family, as a member of the Guang'an house, should have a share of the military expenditures of my Qin family, but my Qin family is indeed very shy. Therefore, this time the supply of medicinal herbs should be based on the previous market price." Hear this. Zhou Minghe and Yang Linyuan breathed a sigh of relief. They really didn't see the wrong person. Qin Daoxian not only had amazing talent, but also knew how to give up. Know when to make the right decision. True. If Qin Daoxian does this, he will lose a lot of profits. However, as long as the Guang'an prefecture holds on to it, the Qin family will be able to gain even greater benefits in the future. Because the Zhao family is gone, the rise of the Qin family just makes up for the Zhao family's medicine pill market. This is the biggest achievement of the Qin family. But the premise of all this is that Guang'an prefecture can keep it. Jiedu Dan, Posha Dan, and Qihui Dan, the original market prices of the 3 kinds of spirit pills are all 10 spirit stones. Qin Daoxian paused. The elixir provided by my Qin family is also at this price, but I have a small request. Qin Daoyu said it bluntly. Zhou Minghe laughed. I want to settle part of this elixir with the merits of the Qianyuan sword sect, is that okay? Hearing this, everyone turned to look at the red-haired Zifu cultivator surnamed Zhang, who had been listening in and did not speak. See everyone looking at him. The red-haired cultivator opened his eyes and said, as long as the soldiers on the front line have no opinion, they can trade with military exploits at any time. Great! Qin Daoxian was excited for a while. Compared with spirit stones, what the Qin family lacked more at this time were all kinds of alchemy, artifact refinement, inheritance, exercises, sword tactics, etc. to enhance the family heritage. Don't say anything else. Speaking of foundation building exercises, Qin Daoxian has never switched to foundation building exercises since he broke through to the foundation building stage. On the one hand, it is because the real essence after the sword intent is more violent. Qin Daoxian needs to be carefully polished for 2 years. Another important reason. That is, Qin Daoxian did not have a suitable foundation building period. Although he had previously purchased a fire attribute foundation building exercise at the auction event, the power of that foundation building exercise was mediocre, which was not what he wanted. You must know that when a cultivator chooses a cultivation technique during the foundation building stage, he will have an opportunity to increase his true essence. Qin Daoxian certainly didn't want to make a choice so casually. And the exercises bought at the auction house are as powerful as the exercises exchanged in Qianyuan sword sect. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.